I'm losing her. Ethan Vaughn's hands trembled as he stared at the custody evaluation form. 32 years old, billionaire, and completely powerless. In 72 hours, a stranger would decide if he was good enough to keep Rosie, the 5-year-old niece who'd become his entire world after his sister's death. No amount of money could buy what he needed most, proof that a man who'd never planned to be a father could actually become one. Then a nurse with kind eyes and threadbare scrubs walked into the examination room, and everything changed. If you want to know how a broken man and a struggling woman built something worth saving, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the pediatric clinic buzzed like angry wasps. Ethan sat on the edge of a plastic chair that probably cost less than his watch, trying to remember how to breathe normally. His $7,000 suit felt wrong here. Too sharp, too expensive, too much of everything that didn't matter. Rosie sat beside him, swinging her legs. Her shoes lit up with each kick, pink and purple stars that she'd picked out herself 3 weeks ago. She'd barely spoken since then, barely smiled, barely looked at him unless he asked her a direct question. Mr. Vaughn? The receptionist's voice cut through his thoughts. Dr. Morrison is running about 20 minutes behind. There's coffee in the waiting area if you'd like some. No, thank you. His voice came out flatter than he intended. 20 minutes. He could survive 20 minutes. He'd survived hostile board meetings, corporate raids, his father's funeral, his sister's funeral. He could survive this. Except he wasn't sure he could. The evaluation appointment had been scheduled for weeks. Mandatory assessment for potential guardians. He'd read every parenting book he could find, hired the best family attorney in the state, renovated his penthouse to include a proper bedroom for Rosie with windows that locked and corners that didn't have sharp edges. He'd done everything right on paper, but paper didn't know that he sometimes forgot to pack her lunch, that he'd yelled at her last Tuesday when she spilled juice on his laptop during a video conference, that he had no idea what he was doing and was terrified every single day that he'd screw this up so badly she'd end up damaged beyond repair. Daddy Ethan? Rosie's small voice barely registered above the buzzing lights. He flinched. She only called him that when she was scared. Most of the time it was just Ethan in that flat, careful tone that made him want to punch something. Yes, sweetheart? Is the doctor going to give me shots? No, no shots today, just talking. She's going to ask you some questions about how you're doing, about school, about home. That's all. Rosie nodded, but her legs stopped swinging. Her hands twisted together in her lap, the same nervous gesture her mother used to make. God, she looked so much like Melissa. Same dark curls, same serious eyes that seemed too old for her face. Ethan checked his phone. 3 missed calls from his COO. 7 emails flagged urgent. A text from his attorney. How are you holding up? He didn't answer any of them. The door to the back hallway opened. A woman emerged, mid-30s maybe, wearing scrubs covered in cartoon elephants. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had the kind of face that looked like it smiled often, even though she wasn't smiling now. Rosie Vaughn, she called, checking her clipboard. Ethan stood. Rosie didn't move. Come on, sweetheart. He held out his hand. After a long moment, she took it. Her palm was sticky, probably from the candy he'd given her in the car because he didn't know what else to do when she started crying about coming here. They followed the woman down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and something else, something softer. Vanilla, maybe. I'm Clara, the woman said, glancing back at them. I'll be helping with Rosie's vitals before Dr. Morrison comes in. We're going to check your height, weight, blood pressure, the usual boring stuff. Sound okay? Rosie didn't answer. Clara didn't push. She just opened the door to an exam room and stepped aside to let them enter. The room was small. There was an examination table covered in crinkly paper, a rolling stool, a blood pressure cart, and approximately 7 million cartoon stickers plastered across every available surface. Someone had tried to make this place less terrifying for kids. It wasn't working. Ethan's chest felt tight. His breathing was getting shallow again. He recognized the signs. He'd had exactly 2 panic attacks in his entire life, both in the last month. He couldn't afford a third one. Not here. Not now. Mr. Vaughn? Clara was looking at him, really looking at him, not at his suit or his watch or the way he carried himself like someone who owned buildings. Do you want to sit down? I'm fine. You don't look fine. The bluntness surprised him. People didn't usually talk to him like that. People usually said what they thought he wanted to hear. He stopped, started again. I just need a minute. Clara nodded. She pulled the rolling stool over to where Rosie stood frozen by the door and sat down so she was at eye level with the girl. Hey, Rosie. I really like your shoes. Can you show me how they light up? Rosie hesitated. Then she stomped one foot. Stars flashed purple. Whoa, that's so cool. Can the other one do it too? Another stomp. More stars. You know what? I had shoes like that when I was little. Mine were red and they made sounds too. Every time I walked, they squeaked. My mom hated them. Clara smiled, an easy, genuine expression that didn't look practiced. Do yours make sounds? Rosie shook her head. Lucky. My mom almost threw mine away because I wore them everywhere, even to bed. Clara stood and walked to the examination table, patting it. Want to hop up here so I can check how tall you are? I bet you've grown since your last checkup. I don't remember my last checkup, Rosie said quietly. That's okay. We'll make this one a good memory instead. Clara helped Rosie onto the table with gentle, efficient movements. She measured height, checked weight, wrapped the small blood pressure cuff around Rosie's arm, and explained each step in a calm voice that never talked down to the kid. Ethan watched from his position against the wall. His breathing was still wrong, but it was getting better. Clara had a way of making the room feel less like a trap, less like the place where his entire future would be decided. Blood pressure's perfect, Clara said, removing the cuff. You're doing great, Rosie. She turned to Ethan. Her expression shifted. Still kind, but more direct. Mr. Vaughn, can I check your blood pressure too? What? No, I'm not the patient. I know, but you look like you're about to pass out, and I'd rather not have to explain to Dr. Morrison why there's a grown man unconscious on her floor. He wanted to argue. He also knew she was right. The edges of his vision were getting fuzzy. Fine, Clara gestured to the stool. He sat. She wrapped the cuff around his arm. Her hands were warm, even through his shirt sleeve, and pressed the button. The cuff inflated, squeezing until it hurt. She watched the monitor. Her eyebrows drew together. When's the last time you slept? I don't know. Yesterday. For how long? A few hours. When's the last time you ate? He couldn't remember. This morning? What did you have? Coffee. Coffee isn't food, Mr. Vaughn. It's fine. I'm fine. The cuff released. Clara pulled it off and wrote something on her clipboard. When she looked up, her expression was serious. Your blood pressure is 160/95. That's stage 2 hypertension. At your age, that's dangerous. You need to see a doctor. I don't have time for... Make time. Because if you collapse from a stroke or a heart attack, Rosie loses you. And from what I can see, she's already lost enough. The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan opened his mouth to snap back, to tell this nurse to mind her own business, to remind her that he had the best private physicians money could buy and didn't need health advice from someone who worked in a pediatric clinic. But he couldn't, because she was right. I'll make an appointment, he said quietly. Good. Clara's expression softened. Look, I don't know your situation, but I can tell you care about this kid. That's more than a lot of people manage. So take care of yourself. She needs you functional. Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. Dr. Morrison entered, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Morrison. You must be Rosie. She smiled at the girl, then at Ethan. And Mr. Vaughn, thank you for coming in today. Of course. Clara gathered her clipboard. I'll be outside if you need anything, she said to Dr. Morrison. Then to Rosie, it was really nice meeting you. Keep those shoes shining, okay? Rosie nodded. Clara left, closing the door behind her. Dr. Morrison pulled up a chair. So, Rosie, I heard you just started kindergarten. How do you like it? And just like that, the evaluation began. Whoa. The appointment lasted 40 minutes. Dr. Morrison asked Rosie questions about school, friends, home. She asked Ethan questions about his work schedule, his support system, his plans for childcare. She made notes. She smiled occasionally. She gave away absolutely nothing about what she was thinking. When it was over, she shook Ethan's hand and told him the written evaluation would be submitted to the family court within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days to wait and wonder if he'd passed or failed at being enough. He walked Rosie back through the clinic, past the waiting area where a dozen other parents sat with their kids. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably his COO again. Probably something on fire at the office that needed his immediate attention. He ignored it. They were almost to the exit when he saw Clara again. She was at the nurse's station filling out paperwork. She looked up as they passed. "Hey, Rosie. Have a good rest of your day, okay?" Rosie stopped walking. She stared at Clara for a long moment. Then so quietly, Ethan almost missed it. "Thank you." Claire's entire face lit up. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Ethan nodded at her, a brief acknowledgement, and kept walking. But as he pushed through the door into the parking lot, he realized his hands had stopped shaking. 2 days later, Ethan collapsed. It happened at the hospital renovation site, a project he'd personally overseen for the last 6 months. The old St. Catherine's building was being converted into a state-of-the-art medical center, and Ethan had insisted on being present for every major milestone. Control was how he managed things. Control was how he kept from falling apart, except his body had other plans. He'd been standing in the main lobby, reviewing structural plans with the lead contractor, when the world tilted sideways. His vision went white. His knees buckled. He remembered hitting the concrete floor, the taste of blood in his mouth, someone shouting his name from very far away. When he opened his eyes again, he was staring at a ceiling he didn't recognize. His head felt like someone had split it open with an axe. Everything hurt. "Mr. Vaughn, can you hear me?" He turned his head, slowly, because moving made everything worse, and saw Clara Bennett looking down at him. "What?" His voice came out as a croak. He tried again. "What are you doing here?" "I work here. Well, I work at the clinic across town most days, but I pick up shifts in the ER sometimes. You're lucky I was here when they brought you in." "Brought me in?" "You collapsed at the construction site. They called an ambulance. You've been out for about 20 minutes. Panic spiked through him. He tried to sit up. Clara put a hand on his shoulder, gentle but firm. "Don't. You probably have a concussion. You need to stay still." "I can't. I have to. Rosie. Rosie's fine." "I called the number listed as your emergency contact. Your assistant said she's with the nanny." His assistant. Right. He'd forgotten he'd even listed her as his emergency contact. He didn't have anyone else. "I need to get out of here." "You need to stay put until the doctor clears you. You fainted, Mr. Vaughn. That's not normal for someone your age." "I didn't faint. Your blood pressure was sky high when I checked it 2 days ago. I'm guessing you didn't make that appointment I told you to make." He didn't answer. Clara sighed. "You're exhausted, dehydrated. Probably haven't eaten anything substantial in days. Your body's shut down because you've been running it into the ground. This isn't complicated medicine. This is basic self-preservation." "I don't have time for self-preservation." "Yeah, I got that impression." She pulled up a chair and sat down, crossing her arms. "Here's the thing. The ER doctor is going to want to keep you overnight for observation. Standard procedure for head injuries. But I'm guessing you're going to refuse because you have a custody evaluation pending and you can't afford to look unstable." He stared at her. "How do you—" "I read charts, I pay attention, and I'm not stupid." She leaned forward. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell the doctor you're stable, and I'll monitor you personally for the next 12 hours. You're going to come to my apartment, because your penthouse probably has staff who will report this to someone. And you're going to rest. If you show any signs of complications, I'll bring you back here immediately. But this way, there's no official hospital admission, no record that could complicate your case." Ethan's head was pounding too hard to process what she was saying. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've seen enough families ripped apart by technicalities. Because that little girl needs you, and because I'm a decent human being who doesn't think people should lose everything because they push themselves too hard trying to keep things together." She said it simply, like it was obvious, like helping a stranger risk her nursing license to protect his custody case was just the reasonable thing to do. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." Before he could argue, before he could think clearly enough to explain why this was a terrible idea, Clara stood and pulled out her phone. "I'm texting my supervisor that I'm taking a personal emergency. Then I'm going to get you discharged against medical advice, which you're going to sign off on. And then you're going to let me help you walk out of here without falling on your face. Got it? He should say no. He should insist on going home. He should maintain at least the appearance of having his life under control, but his head hurt. His body felt like it had been run over by a truck, and Clara was looking at him with an expression that was somehow both stern and kind at the same time. "Okay," he heard himself say. Clara's apartment was nothing like what he expected. It was small, maybe 600 square feet total, on the third floor of a building that had definitely seen better decades. The walls were thin enough that he could hear the neighbors arguing in Spanish on one side and someone's TV on the other. The furniture looked like it came from a thrift store. The kitchen was barely big enough to turn around in, but it was clean and warm. And there were plants on the windowsill and photographs stuck to the refrigerator with magnets and a quilt draped over the couch that looked handmade. It felt like a home. His penthouse felt like a hotel. Clara helped him to the couch and disappeared into the kitchen. He heard water running, cabinets opening and closing. She returned with a glass of water and 2 pills. "Ibuprofen, for your head." He took them without arguing. She sat in the armchair across from him, watching him carefully. "How's your vision? Any nausea? Sensitivity to light?" "I'm fine." "That's not an answer to my question." "My vision's clear. No nausea. The light bothers me a little, but not much." "Okay, that's good." She pulled out her phone and set a timer. "I'm going to check on you every 2 hours. If anything changes, we're going to the hospital. No arguments." "You really don't have to do this." "I know I don't have to. I want to." She tucked her phone away. "When's the last time someone took care of you, Mr. Vaughn?" The question caught him off guard. He didn't have an answer. Clara seemed to understand. She stood and moved to the kitchen again. "I'm making soup. You're going to eat it. Then you're going to sleep for at least 4 hours." "I can't sleep. I need to pick up Rosie from—" "Your assistant already arranged for the nanny to stay late. I texted her from your phone while you were getting discharged. Rosie's covered." He wanted to be angry about that, about her taking control of his life without permission, but mostly he just felt tired. The soup was chicken noodle, from a can probably, but it tasted better than anything he'd eaten in weeks. Clara made him finish the entire bowl before she'd let him lie down. The couch was lumpy and too short for his frame, but the quilt was soft and the apartment was quiet in a way his penthouse never was. He closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them again, the light outside had changed. Evening. Clara was sitting in the armchair with a book, reading by the glow of a small lamp. "What time is it?" His voice came out rough. "Almost 7. You slept for 5 hours." She closed the book and leaned forward. "How do you feel?" "Better." It was true. The headache had faded to a dull throb, and his body didn't feel like it was trying to shut down anymore. "Good. I checked on you twice. You didn't wake up, but your breathing was normal, and you weren't showing any concerning symptoms." She stood and stretched. "I'm going to make tea. Want some?" "Sure." She disappeared into the kitchen. Ethan sat up slowly, testing his balance. Steady. He looked around the apartment more carefully now. There were textbooks stacked on a shelf by the window, medical journals, a laptop that looked ancient. On the wall, a framed certificate. Clara Bennett, registered nurse. Dated 3 years ago. She couldn't be making much money working at that clinic. The furniture, the building, the ancient laptop, it all pointed to someone living paycheck to paycheck. Yet she'd risked her job to help him. A stranger. Someone who could probably buy this entire building without thinking twice about it. Clara returned with 2 mugs of tea. She handed him one and sat back down. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Sure." "Why did you help me?" "Really?" She considered the question, wrapping her hands around her mug. "You want the simple answer or the complicated one?" "Both. Simple answer, because you needed help, and I could give it." She took a sip of tea. Complicated answer, because I grew up in foster care. I know what it's like when the system decides you're not good enough. When people who don't know you get to make choices about your entire life based on paperwork and first impressions. And I could tell, at the clinic, that you're trying, really trying. Not everyone does. Foster care. That explained some things. The way she'd looked at Rosie. The way she'd understood immediately why he couldn't afford an overnight hospital stay on his record. "I'm sorry," he said. "That must have been hard." It was, but it also taught me that the people who show up matter more than the people who just talk about showing up. She met his eyes. You showed up for that evaluation even though you were clearly falling apart. That says something. It says I'm desperate. It says you care. There's a difference. They sat in silence for a while, drinking tea. Outside, the city hummed, traffic sounds, distant sirens, someone laughing on the street below. Normal sounds, life happening all around them. I should go, Ethan said eventually. Pick up Rosie, get home. Okay, but promise me something first. What? Make an appointment with an actual doctor. Get your blood pressure checked properly. Figure out how to take care of yourself. Because running yourself into the ground isn't sustainable, and Rosie needs you around for a long time. I promise. Clara studied him like she was trying to decide if he meant it. Then she nodded. Good, I'll drive you to your car. It's still at the construction site. They didn't talk much during the drive. Claire's car was old, at least 15 years, with a crack in the windshield and seats that had been patched with duct tape. But it ran, and she drove with the kind of careful attention that suggested she couldn't afford repairs if something went wrong. When they pulled up next to his BMW at the construction site, Ethan hesitated before getting out. Thank you, he said. For everything, I mean it. You're welcome. Clara smiled. Take care of yourself, Mr. Vaughn. Ethan, you can call me Ethan. Okay, Ethan. He climbed out of the car and watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the evening traffic. Then he got into his own car and sat there for a long moment, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. A nurse he barely knew had taken him to her apartment, fed him soup, let him sleep on her couch, and asked for nothing in return. No favors, no money, no networking opportunities or connections to his world. Just kindness. Simple, straightforward kindness from someone who had every reason to be bitter about life, but somehow wasn't. He pulled out his phone and texted his assistant, I need the name of a good GP, someone who can see me this week. Then he drove home to pick up Rosie. The penthouse was exactly as he'd left it that morning. Immaculate. Empty. The nanny, a competent woman in her 60s named Mrs. Chen, was reading to Rosie in the living room when he walked in. Mr. Vaughn. She stood quickly. Are you all right? Your assistant said there was an emergency. I'm fine. Thank you for staying late. Of course. Rosie had dinner and finished her homework. She's been very good. Rosie looked up from where she sat on the couch, her expression carefully neutral. You're home late. I know. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I had some work stuff to handle. Mrs. Chen gathered her things and left. Ethan sat down next to Rosie, suddenly exhausted all over again, despite the 5-hour nap. Did you have a good day? He asked. It was okay. Just okay? Rosie shrugged. Tommy said his mom is coming to Career Day next week to talk about being a dentist. Mrs. Patterson asked if you're coming. Career Day. He'd completely forgotten about Career Day. Do you want me to come? He asked carefully. Another shrug. I don't know. What would you talk about? I could talk about running a company, about how businesses work. Would that be interesting? Maybe. Tommy's mom is going to let everyone look at fake teeth. Fake teeth were apparently more exciting than corporate management. Fair enough. I'll talk to Mrs. Patterson, Ethan said. Figure something out. Rosie nodded. She picked at a loose thread on the couch cushion. Ethan? Yeah? Are you sick? The question startled him. What? No. Why would you think that? Mrs. Chen said you had an emergency, and you look tired all the time, and sometimes you forget things. Her voice got very small. Mommy looked tired all the time before she got sick. Oh, God. Ethan's chest constricted. Melissa had been sick for months before the diagnosis, exhausted, forgetting things, brushing it off as stress until it was too late. Of course, Rosie would make that connection. Of course, she'd be terrified of losing someone else. He pulled her into his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. She didn't resist. I'm not sick, Rosie, I promise. I'm just working too much and not sleeping enough. That's different. That's fixable. How? I'm going to see a doctor. Get checked out properly. Make sure everything's okay. When? This week. She was quiet for a moment, then, okay. They sat like that for a while. Rosie tucked against his chest, his chin resting on top of her head. She smelled like the lavender shampoo Mrs. Chen used and the crayons she'd been coloring with. This was what mattered, not the board meetings or the construction projects or the corporate empire his father had built. This. This small, scared kid who'd lost her mother and was trying so hard not to lose anyone else. "I love you, Rosie," he said quietly. She didn't answer, but her hand came up and gripped his shirt, holding on tight. The evaluation results came back 10 days later. Ethan was in a meeting when his attorney called. He excused himself and took the call in the hallway, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. "They approved you," his attorney said without preamble. "Conditional approval for the first 6 months, full custody review after that. But it's approved, Ethan. You get to keep her." The relief was so intense it made him dizzy. He leaned against the wall, pressing his free hand over his eyes. "What are the conditions?" "Standard stuff. Continue therapy for Rosie, maintain stable housing and income, submit to home visits from social services. Nothing you can't handle." "Okay. Thank you." "Congratulations, Ethan. You did it." He ended the call and stood there in the empty hallway, trying to process what he was feeling. Relief, yes, but also terror, because now it was real. Now he was legally responsible for raising this kid. For the next 13 years minimum, her entire life was in his hands. He couldn't screw this up. He went back to the meeting, finished the presentation, shook hands with the investors. Normal business, normal day. Except nothing felt normal anymore. That evening, he told Rosie over dinner, "The court said I can keep taking care of you, officially. You're going to stay here with me." Rosie looked up from her chicken nuggets. "Forever?" "As long as you want to. Yeah." She thought about that. Then she went back to her dinner without comment. No celebration, no relief, no emotion at all, just acceptance. It hurt more than he expected. 2 weeks passed. Ethan kept his promise. He saw a doctor, got his blood pressure under control, started taking medication, started sleeping more. The social worker made her first home visit and seemed satisfied. Rosie started speaking in full sentences occasionally instead of one-word answers. Small progress. Fragile progress. And through it all, Ethan kept thinking about Clara, the nurse who'd helped him when she had no reason to, who'd seen him at his worst and hadn't judged, who'd understood what he was fighting for without him having to explain. He should thank her properly, send flowers maybe, a gift card, something. Except none of that felt right. It all felt too transactional, too much like what he usually did, solve problems with money and move on. Finally, 3 weeks after the collapse, he went back to the clinic. It was a Thursday afternoon. The waiting room was packed with kids and exhausted parents. Ethan felt out of place in his business suit, carrying a small gift bag. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. "I'm looking for Clara Bennett, one of the nurses." "She's with a patient right now. Do you have an appointment?" "No, I wanted to drop something off for her." The receptionist looked skeptical, but took the bag. "I'll make sure she gets it." Ethan almost left, but then the door to the back hallway opened and Clara emerged, carrying a file. She saw him immediately. Her eyebrows went up. "Ethan?" "Hi. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by." It was a terrible lie. The clinic was nowhere near his office or his apartment, but Clara didn't call him on it. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Better." "Good, actually. I saw a doctor like you told me to. Got medication for the blood pressure. Haven't collapsed again." "That's good," she smiled. "How's Rosie?" "She's okay. We got the evaluation results back. I have custody." "Ethan, that's wonderful." "Yeah." He shifted his weight, suddenly uncertain. "I wanted to thank you, properly, for what you did, for helping me when you didn't have to." "You already thanked me." "I know, but—" He gestured at the gift bag the receptionist was holding. "I brought you something. It's not much. Just coffee. Good coffee. I remembered you had instant in your apartment, and I thought, anyway, it's just coffee." Claire's expression softened. She walked over to the receptionist, took the bag, looked inside. When she looked back up, her eyes were bright. "This is really nice. Thank you. It's nothing. It's not nothing." She held his gaze. "You didn't have to come all the way down here." "I wanted to." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the chaos of the waiting room, kids crying, Parents arguing with insurance companies, phones ringing, and somehow it felt like the rest of the world had gone quiet. "I should let you get back to work," Ethan said finally. "Yeah, busy day." But she didn't move, neither did he. "Ethan," Clara said quietly. "Yeah? If you ever need help again, with Rosie or anything else, you can call me. I mean it." She pulled a business card from her scrubs pocket and handed it to him. Her personal cell number was written on the back in neat handwriting. "Thank you," he said. "Take care of yourself." "You too." He left before he could say something stupid, before he could ask why a woman who barely knew him kept offering help he didn't deserve, before he could admit that he hadn't been able to stop thinking about her for 3 weeks straight. In the car, he stared at the business card for a long time. Then he put it carefully in his wallet and drove back to work. That night, after Rosie was asleep, Ethan stood at the window of his penthouse looking out over the city. Lights stretched in every direction, millions of people living their lives, fighting their battles, trying to hold things together. Somewhere out there, Clara was probably getting ready for bed in her tiny apartment, maybe drinking tea, maybe reading one of those medical journals, living her life completely separate from his, except their lives weren't completely separate anymore. She'd seen him vulnerable. She'd helped him when he was falling apart. She'd given him her number and told him to call if he needed anything. And the terrifying part was that he wanted to call, not because he needed help, but because talking to her had made him feel less alone than he'd felt in months. His phone buzzed, a text from his attorney. "Home visit scheduled for next week, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Let me know if that works." He confirmed and put the phone down. The evaluation was over. He had custody. Everything was supposed to get easier now. So why did it still feel like he was one wrong move away from losing everything? The home visit went better than expected. The social worker, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Martinez, spent 2 hours inspecting the penthouse, asking questions, watching how Ethan and Rosie interacted. She made notes. She smiled politely. She left without giving any indication of whether he'd passed or failed some invisible test. "She seemed nice," Mrs. Chen said after Patricia had gone. "She seemed thorough," Ethan corrected. He went back to work, tried to focus on the quarterly earnings report his CFO kept pestering him about. The numbers blurred together. He kept thinking about the way Patricia had looked at Rosie's bedroom, clinical, analytical, like she was cataloging evidence, which, he supposed, she was. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Vaughn, this is Linda Carmichael from St. Catherine's Hospital Administration." St. Catherine's. The renovation project. He sat up straighter. "Yes. How can I help you?" "I'm calling about the incident 2 weeks ago, when you collapsed on site." His stomach dropped. "What about it?" "We need to file an incident report. Standard procedure for any workplace injury, even for visitors. I'll need you to come in and sign some paperwork." "I wasn't injured. I was checked out and released the same day. According to our records, you were treated in the ER by one of our nurses but left against medical advice. We still need documentation." Her voice was crisp, professional, completely inflexible. "Can you come in tomorrow? Say, 2 o'clock?" He wanted to say no. He wanted to tell her to handle it remotely, but something in her tone suggested that wasn't an option. "Fine, 2 o'clock. "Excellent. I'll see you then, Mr. Vaughn." She hung up before he could ask any more questions. Ethan stared at his phone, unease crawling up his spine. Something about that call felt off. Standard procedure didn't usually require the administrative director to personally schedule appointments. He texted his attorney. "Got a call from St. Catherine's about an incident report. Should I be worried?" The response came back 5 minutes later. "Probably routine, but don't sign anything without reading it carefully. Call me if you need me there." Routine. Right. Nothing about the last 2 months had been routine. That evening, after putting Rosie to bed, Ethan pulled out Clara's business card. He'd looked at it probably 50 times since she'd given it to him. The cardstock was cheap, the printing slightly off-center. Her name, her title, the clinic's address. And on the back, in her handwriting, a phone number. He could call, ask her about Linda Carmichael, ask if the woman was always this intense about paperwork, or if something else was going on. Except calling Clara about work stuff felt like an excuse. and he wasn't sure what he was making an excuse for. He put the card back in his wallet. The next day, he arrived at St. Catherine's at exactly 2 o'clock. The hospital was a maze of construction barriers and temporary hallways. Half the building was gutted, exposed beams and plastic sheeting everywhere. The other half was still operational, doctors and nurses moving through the chaos like it was completely normal. Linda Carmichael's office was on the 3rd floor, past 2 security checkpoints and down a corridor that smelled like fresh paint. She was waiting when he arrived. A woman in her early 50s, gray suit, hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "Mr. Vaughn, thank you for coming." She didn't offer to shake hands. "Please, sit." He sat. The office was aggressively neat, everything at right angles, not a paper out of place. A filing cabinet stood against one wall. Her desk was empty except for a single folder. "I'll get right to the point," Linda said, opening the folder. "According to our ER records, you were treated by Nurse Clara Bennett on the 15th of last month. You presented with acute hypertension and a possible concussion after collapsing at our construction site. That's correct? And Nurse Bennett discharged you against medical advice after only 2 hours of observation. I signed the AMA form. It was my choice to leave." "Yes, but it was Nurse Bennett's choice to allow it." Linda pulled out a printed document, the ER report, from the look of it. "Standard protocol for head injuries requires a minimum of 6 hours observation." She cut that short. "And according to the notes, she indicated she would personally monitor you for the remainder of the observation period." Ethan's chest tightened. So that's highly irregular. Nurses don't provide private medical care to patients outside of hospital supervision. It opens the hospital to significant liability. "Nothing happened. I was fine." "That's not the point, Mr. Vaughn." Linda folded her hands on the desk. "I've reviewed Nurse Bennett's file. She's had several instances of bending protocol. Small things mostly, staying late with patients, following up on cases that aren't her responsibility. Nothing actionable. Until now." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that her decision to take you home and monitor you privately was a serious breach of professional boundaries. And I need to understand why she did it." The question hung in the air between them. Ethan understood immediately what she was implying, that Clara had done something inappropriate, that there was something improper about their interaction. "She helped me because I asked her to," he said carefully. "I explained that I had personal circumstances that made an overnight hospital stay complicated. She found a solution that kept me safe while respecting my situation. That's good medicine, not a breach of protocol. Good medicine follows hospital policy, Mr. Vaughn, not personal judgment." "Then maybe your hospital policy needs updating." Linda's expression didn't change. "I'll need to speak with Nurse Bennett, get her account of what happened. This meeting is to inform you that you may be contacted as part of that investigation." "Investigation? You're investigating her for helping me?" "I'm investigating a protocol violation. Whether it was well-intentioned is beside the point." She closed the folder. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Vaughn. Someone will be in touch if we need additional information." She was dismissing him, just like that, telling him she was going to potentially ruin Clara's career and expecting him to walk away. "Don't do this," Ethan said. "Excuse me?" "Don't punish her for doing the right thing. She helped me when I needed it. That's all that happened." "The right thing is following established medical protocols. They exist for a reason. The protocols didn't account for my situation." "Then you should have stayed in the hospital." Linda stood, signaling the meeting was over. "I appreciate your perspective, Mr. Vaughn, but this is a hospital administration matter. I'm sure you understand." He didn't understand, but arguing wasn't going to help Clara. He left the office, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth hurt. In the hallway, he pulled out his phone and called his attorney. "They're going after her," he said when she picked up. "The nurse who helped me. They're investigating her for protocol violations." "Slow down. Who's investigating?" He explained. "Linda Carmichael. The incident report, the thinly veiled accusation of impropriety." His attorney was quiet for a moment. "Ethan, I need you to be honest with me. Was there anything inappropriate about your interaction with this nurse?" "What?" "No, she helped me. That's it. No personal relationship, no exchange of money or favors. I brought her coffee as a thank you. That's it." Another pause. "Okay, here's the problem. If the hospital wants to make this an issue, they can. Medical professionals have strict boundaries about treating people outside of clinical settings. Even if her intentions were good, she did technically violate protocol. So what do I do? Nothing. You don't do anything. If they contact you, tell the truth. But don't try to intervene. That'll just make it look like there's something to hide. She could lose her job. I know. But you inserting yourself into a hospital HR investigation won't help her. It'll hurt her. And potentially hurt your custody case if it looks like you're involved in some kind of inappropriate relationship. Ethan closed his eyes. His attorney was right. He knew she was right. But the idea of doing nothing while Clara faced consequences for helping him made him feel sick. Okay, he said finally, I'll stay out of it. But he didn't put his phone away. Instead, he pulled up Clara's number and typed out a message. Linda Carmichael called me in about the incident report. I think she's going to make trouble for you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. He stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. The response came back 20 minutes later. Don't worry about it. I knew the risks when I made the call. Thanks for the heads up. That was it. No anger, no blame, no panic, just acceptance. It made him feel worse. He drove back to the office and tried to work, failed miserably, left early to pick up Rosie from school. She was waiting outside her classroom with her backpack, talking to another girl. When she saw him, she said goodbye to her friend and walked over. You're early, she said. Yeah, meetings ended sooner than I thought. They walked to the car in silence. Rosie climbed into her booster seat, buckled herself in. She'd gotten good at that. Good at a lot of things. Making her own breakfast, packing her backpack, remembering homework. All the little independent skills that kids learned when adults were too distracted to do everything for them. How was school? Ethan asked. Fine. Just fine? We had art. I painted a flower. What kind of flower? I don't know. Just a flower. Can we get ice cream? The request surprised him. Rosie almost never asked for things. She just accepted whatever he offered and didn't push for more. Sure, ice cream sounds good. They stopped at a place near the apartment, a mom-and-pop shop that had been there forever, the kind with mismatched chairs and flavors written on a chalkboard. Rosie got strawberry and a cone. Ethan got coffee and immediately regretted it when the first taste told him it was terrible coffee. They sat at a table by the window. Rosie ate her ice cream carefully, licking around the edges to keep it from dripping. Ethan? She said after a while. Yeah? Do you have a girlfriend? He choked on his coffee. What? No. Why? Sarah's dad has a girlfriend. She comes to pick Sarah up sometimes. She's nice. Oh. Well, no, I don't have a girlfriend. Why not? Because I've been busy. Taking care of you, working. I haven't really thought about it. Rosie considered this, still working on her ice cream. Mommy had a boyfriend before she got sick. His name was Derek. He was mean. Ethan went very still. Melissa had never mentioned anyone named Derek. Mean how? He yelled a lot, at Mommy, sometimes at me. Rosie said it matter-of-factly, like she was reporting the weather. Mommy told him to leave and he broke her phone. Then we moved to a different apartment. Jesus Christ! Melissa had dealt with an abusive boyfriend while she was already sick, already struggling, and she'd never told him, never asked for help. I'm sorry that happened to you, Rosie, she shrugged. It's okay. He's gone now. Yeah, he is. Ethan reached across the table and squeezed her hand. If anyone ever makes you feel scared or unsafe, you tell me, right away. Promise? Promise. They finished their ice cream. On the drive home, Rosie fell asleep in her booster seat, her head tilted at an angle that was definitely going to give her a sore neck. Ethan carried her up to the penthouse, put her in bed without waking her. She stirred just enough to grab her stuffed rabbit before settling again. He stood in the doorway of her room for a long time, watching her sleep, thinking about all the things he didn't know, all the ways Melissa had protected her daughter without anyone knowing how hard she was fighting. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Patricia Martinez. I need to schedule a follow-up visit. Are you available Friday afternoon? Another inspection, another test. He confirmed Friday and put the phone away. Later that night, after he'd tried and failed to focus on work emails, he found himself looking at Clara's number again. His attorney had told him to stay out of the hospital investigation, not to make things worse, but thanking someone wasn't making things worse. and he owed her more than a text message. Before he could overthink it, he called. She answered on the third ring. Hello? Clara, it's Ethan. Oh, hi. She sounded surprised. Is everything okay? Yeah, I wanted to check on you about the investigation. There's not much to check on yet. Linda called me in yesterday, asked a bunch of questions. I told her the truth. Now I wait and see if I still have a job next week. She said it lightly, but he could hear the tension underneath. I'm sorry. This is my fault. It's not your fault. I made a choice. I knew what I was doing. Why did you do it? The question came out before he could stop it. You barely knew me. You could have just let the ER doctor admit me overnight and been done with it. Why risk your job? Clara was quiet for a moment. He could hear something in the background, music maybe, or a TV. You really want to know? She said finally. Yeah, I do. Because when I was 12, I was in a foster home with this woman named Margaret. She was okay. Not great, not terrible. Just okay. And one day I got sick at school. Really sick, throwing up everywhere. The school called Margaret and she said she couldn't leave work to pick me up. So I sat in the nurse's office for 4 hours waiting, and the whole time I kept thinking that if I was someone's real kid, they would have come. Ethan didn't say anything, didn't trust himself to. When I saw you at the clinic with Rosie, Claire continued, I saw someone who was trying so hard to be what she needed, and I thought about all the times nobody tried that hard for me. So yeah, I broke protocol. Because sometimes the rules don't account for what people actually need, and I'd rather get in trouble for doing the right thing than stay safe by doing nothing. The honesty in her voice hit him like a punch. No deflection, no pretense. Just raw truth from someone who'd learned early that the world didn't care unless you made it care. You're going to be a problem for me, he said quietly. What? Nothing. Forget it. He rubbed his face. Thank you for telling me that, and for everything else. You already thanked me multiple times. You can stop now. I don't think I can. She laughed, a real laugh, not polite or practiced. You're persistent. I'll give you that. It's a character flaw. Among others, I'm sure. They talked for another 20 minutes, about nothing important, about her shift schedule and his construction project and whether the weather was ever going to cool down. Easy conversation, the kind he hadn't had with anyone in months, maybe years. When they finally hung up, he realized he was smiling. Friday's home visit was shorter than the first one. Patricia arrived with a checklist and a neutral expression. She asked Rosie questions about school, about her nightmares, about whether she felt safe. She asked Ethan about his work schedule, about his support system, about his plans if he got sick or had an emergency. Do you have family nearby? Patricia asked. Anyone who could take care of Rosie if something happened to you? No, no family. Friends? He thought about the people he knew. Business associates mostly, colleagues he'd worked with for years but never spent time with outside of meetings. His college roommate who'd moved to Singapore. The neighbor in the penthouse across the hall who he'd spoken to maybe 3 times. I have Mrs. Chen, the nanny. She's very reliable. Patricia wrote something down. What about a backup plan if Mrs. Chen isn't available? I haven't needed one yet. You should have one. Single parents need contingency plans. What if you collapse again? What if you're out of town and Mrs. Chen has a family emergency? She was right. He knew she was right, but the question felt like a trap. Like admitting he didn't have answers was the same as admitting he wasn't capable. I'll work on that, he said. Patricia looked at him for a long moment, then she closed her notebook. Mr. Vaughn, can I be frank with you? Please. You're doing better than I expected. Rosie is adjusting. The home is stable. You're clearly committed, but you're also clearly overwhelmed, and that concerns me. I'm handling it. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like you're one crisis away from falling apart. And if you fall apart, Rosie pays the price. The words stung because they were true. What do you want me to do? He asked. Build a support network. Find people you can rely on. Join a single-parent support group. Make friends with other parents at Rosie's school. Something. Anything. Because raising a kid alone is impossible if you're actually alone. She left after that. No indication of whether the visit had gone well or poorly, just more notes added to some file somewhere that would determine Rosie's future. Ethan stood at the window after she'd gone, looking out at the city. Build a support network. Make friends. It sounded so simple when she said it, so obvious, except he'd spent the last decade building a business, not a life. He'd made himself indispensable at work and invisible everywhere else, and now he was paying for it. His phone rang. Clara. Hey, he said, answering immediately. Hey, bad time? No, good time actually. What's up? I just got out of my meeting with Linda Carmichael. Official meeting this time, with HR present. His stomach dropped. And? And I'm on probation for 3 months. One more protocol violation and I'm done. But I get to keep my job. Relief flooded through him. That's good. That's better than... Yeah, it could have been worse. She wanted to fire me. HR talked her down. Clara paused. She's not a good person, Ethan. Linda Carmichael. I don't know what her deal is, but she had this look the whole meeting like she was enjoying making me sweat. I got the same impression when I met with her. Yeah, well, watch yourself around her. I get the feeling she's the type to hold grudges. They talked for a few more minutes. Clara had to go. Her shift was starting soon. But before she hung up, she said something that stuck with him. You doing okay? You sound stressed. Just the usual, social worker visit, questions about support networks and contingency plans, the fun stuff. Do you have a support network? Not really. Then I guess you should build one. You sound like Patricia, Clara laughed. Smart woman. Listen, I have to go. But if you ever need someone to be on your emergency contact list, I'm around. I mean it. She hung up before he could respond. Ethan stared at his phone. Emergency contact list. She just offered to be part of his contingency plan, the backup plan Patricia had been pushing for. Except Clara wasn't backup. She wasn't contingency. She was becoming something else entirely, and that terrified him more than any custody evaluation ever could. The weekend passed in a blur. Rosie had a playdate on Saturday, the first one she'd agreed to since moving in with him. He drove her to Sarah's house, met Sarah's parents, made awkward small talk about school and kindergarten curriculum. Sarah's mother invited him to a parent coffee meetup on Tuesday mornings. Just a casual thing, she said. A bunch of us get together at the cafe down the street from school, complain about our kids, share survival tips. You should come. I work Tuesdays. Oh, well, if you ever have a morning free, the offer stands. He thanked her and left. Knew he'd never go. Tuesday morning coffee with other parents sounded like something from a life he didn't have. On Sunday, he took Rosie to the park. She played on the swings while he sat on a bench, checking emails. Work never stopped. The hospital renovation was behind schedule. The board wanted answers about quarterly projections. His CFO needed approval on 3 different contracts. Ethan, watch this. He looked up just in time to see Rosie jump off the swing. She landed hard, stumbled, caught herself. Turned to him with a huge smile. The first real smile he'd seen from her in weeks. That was great, sweetheart. She ran back to the swing, pumped her legs to build momentum again. Other kids played nearby. Their parents sat in clusters, talking and laughing. One of them glanced over at Ethan, then away quickly when he noticed her looking. He was used to being the outsider, used to being the guy who didn't quite fit. But it hit different watching Rosie play alone while groups of kids ran past her without inviting her to join. She didn't seem to care. Or maybe she'd just gotten good at pretending not to care. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He considered not answering. Mr. Vaughn, this is Dr. Morrison from the clinic. The evaluation doctor. His chest tightened. Yes, hello. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I wanted to touch base about Rosie's therapy sessions. I see in her file that she's only attended 2 out of the recommended 8 sessions. Damn it. He'd meant to schedule more. It kept slipping through the cracks. I'll get those scheduled this week. Please do. Therapy is a condition of your custody approval. Family court takes compliance seriously. I understand. Good. Also, I wanted to mention, I've been reviewing Rosie's progress notes from school. Her teacher has some concerns about social engagement. Rosie spends most of recess alone. She doesn't participate in group activities unless directly prompted. Have you noticed similar behavior at home? He watched Rosie on the swing, alone in a playground full of kids. Yeah, I've noticed. It's not uncommon for children who've experienced trauma, but we should address it proactively. I'd like to add some social skills groups to her treatment plan. There's a group for kids her age that meets on Thursdays after school. Another appointment, another thing to schedule and manage and remember. Okay, send me the information and I'll get her enrolled. Excellent. And Mr. Vaughn, make sure those therapy sessions get scheduled soon. She hung up. Ethan put his phone away and watched Rosie swing higher and higher, her dark curls flying behind her. Build a support network. Make friends. Schedule therapy. Attend social skills groups. Don't collapse. Don't forget lunches. Don't mess this up. The list kept getting longer. That night, after Rosie was in bed, he opened his laptop and searched for single-parent support groups. Found a few forums online, a couple of local meetups that conflicted with his work schedule. Everything required time he didn't have and vulnerability he wasn't ready for. He closed the laptop, opened his phone, looked at Clara's number. She'd said he could call, said she'd be on his emergency contact list if he needed her. But calling felt like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. Admitting he couldn't do this alone meant admitting he was failing. The phone rang in his hand, startling him. Clara's name on the screen. He answered. Hello? Okay, don't freak out, but I'm outside your building. What? I'm outside. I brought food, real food, not coffee. Can I come up? Clara, it's 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. I know. Is that a yes or a no? You should say no. Should tell her it wasn't appropriate, that people would talk, that his attorney had specifically warned him about appearances. Apartment 4102, he said instead. 5 minutes later, his doorbell rang. He opened it to find Clara standing in his hallway wearing jeans and a sweater, holding 2 paper bags that smelled incredible. Hi, she said. I made too much lasagna. Thought you might be hungry. It was the worst lie he'd ever heard. Nobody accidentally made too much lasagna and decided to drive across town to deliver it at 9 on a Sunday. Come in, he said. She walked into the penthouse and stopped, looking around. He tried to see it through her eyes, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the designer furniture, the kitchen that probably cost more than her annual salary, everything cold and perfect and empty. Nice place, she said neutrally. It's too big. Yeah, I can see that. She walked to the kitchen and set the bags on the counter. Plates? He got plates. She served the lasagna, homemade, still warm, the kind of comfort food he hadn't eaten since his mother died. They sat at the kitchen island because the dining room felt too formal. This is really good, he said after the first bite. My foster mom's recipe. Only good thing I learned from her. Clara ate slowly, not quite meeting his eyes. So, you want to tell me why you sounded like you were drowning when I called earlier? I didn't call you earlier. No, but I called you and you sounded terrible, so I'm here. Talk to me. He shouldn't. Should keep it professional, keep the distance. But he was so tired of keeping everything locked down. The social worker says I need a support network. The doctor says Rosie needs more therapy. Everyone keeps telling me what I'm doing wrong, and nobody's telling me how to fix it. And I'm trying. I'm really trying. But it feels like I'm always one step behind. Clara listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to be your emergency contact, your backup plan. If something happens and you can't pick up Rosie, you call me. If you need someone to go to a school thing and you're stuck at work, I'll go. If you need to talk to someone at 2 a.m. because you're panicking, I'll answer the phone. You can't do that. Why not? Because I barely know you, because you have your own life, because it's not fair to ask you to... You're not asking, I'm offering. There's a difference. She put her fork down. Look, I get it. You're used to doing everything yourself. But that's not sustainable, Ethan. And Rosie needs you to be sustainable. Why are you doing this? I told you already, because nobody did it for me. She met his eyes. And because you're not as alone as you think you are. You just have to stop pretending you are. They sat in silence for a while, eating lasagna. Outside, the city lights glittered. Inside, something had shifted. Some wall he'd been maintaining had developed a crack. Thank you, he said quietly. You're welcome. Clara stayed another hour. They talked about nothing important, her nursing school stories, his complete failure at cooking anything more complicated than toast, whether Rosie's teacher was being fair about the homework load. Easy conversation that felt like a luxury after months of every interaction being loaded with judgment. When she left, the penthouse felt emptier than usual. Ethan cleaned up the kitchen, put the leftover lasagna in the refrigerator, checked on Rosie, still asleep, still holding her rabbit. Then he went to his own room and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Clara had just offered to become part of his life. Not just his contingency plan, his actual, real life. And he had no idea what to do with that. Monday morning started with Rosie throwing up in the bathroom at 6:15. Ethan heard the sound from his bedroom, was out of bed, and down the hall before he was fully awake. She was kneeling on the tile floor, sobbing, her pajamas splattered. Hey, it's okay. He knelt beside her, rubbing her back. You're okay, sweetheart. I'm sorry, she choked out between sobs. You don't have to be sorry. You're sick. That's not your fault. He got her cleaned up, changed into fresh pajamas, settled on the couch with a bucket and her rabbit. Took her temperature. No fever. Could be a stomach bug. Could be something she ate. Could be stress manifesting physically because 5-year-olds couldn't always put words to what they were feeling. He called Mrs. Chen to let her know he'd be staying home. Called his assistant to cancel his morning meetings. Sent an email to Rosie's teacher explaining she wouldn't be at school. Then he sat on the floor next to the couch, one hand resting on Rosie's ankle, and tried to remember if there was anything in the apartment that qualified as sick kid food. Crackers, maybe. Ginger ale. He had no idea if they had ginger ale. Rosie threw up twice more before noon. Each time, Ethan cleaned her up and told her it was okay and felt completely helpless. This was the kind of thing mothers were supposed to know how to handle. Melissa would have known exactly what to do. Would have had the right foods, the right words, the right instincts. All he had was a desperate desire not to screw this up worse than he already was. Around 1 o'clock, his phone rang. Clara. Hey, he answered, keeping his voice low. Rosie had finally fallen asleep. Hey, I was just calling to check in. How are you holding up? Rosie's sick. She's been throwing up all morning. Poor thing. Any fever? No. That's good. Probably just a stomach bug. Is she keeping any fluids down? She hasn't tried in a while. She fell asleep about 20 minutes ago. Okay. When she wakes up, try small sips of water or flat ginger ale. No food until she can keep liquids down for at least 2 hours. And if she gets a fever or can't keep anything down by tonight, you should take her to the doctor. The relief he felt hearing someone tell him what to do was embarrassing. Thank you. You sound exhausted. I'm fine. Right, listen, I get off at 4. You want me to swing by, bring some supplies? He should say no. Should tell her he had it under control. But the idea of having someone else in the apartment who actually knew what they were doing sounded like salvation. Yeah, that would be good. Clara showed up at 4:30 with 2 grocery bags full of things Ethan would never have thought to buy. Saltines, Pedialyte, chicken broth, popsicles. She set everything on the kitchen counter, then went straight to where Rosie was still sleeping on the couch. How's she doing? Clara asked quietly. She threw up once more after I talked to you. Nothing since. That's progress. Clara touched the back of her hand to Rosie's forehead. No fever. Good. Rosie stirred, opened her eyes, saw Clara and looked confused. Hi, sweetheart, Clara said. I heard you weren't feeling well, so I came to check on you. Is that okay? Rosie nodded slowly. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. Do you think you could try drinking something, just a little bit? Another nod. Clara went to the kitchen and came back with a glass of Pedialyte. Tiny sips, she instructed. If your tummy feels okay after a few minutes, you can have a little more. Rosie took the glass with both hands and sipped carefully. Waited. Sipped again. Good job, Clara said. She sat on the edge of the couch, smoothing Rosie's hair back from her face. The gesture was natural, maternal, the kind of thing Ethan never quite knew how to do without feeling awkward. They stayed like that for a while, Clara sitting with Rosie, Ethan watching from the kitchen doorway. His phone buzzed repeatedly with work emails he ignored. The renovation project was having issues. The contractor needed decisions. His CFO wanted to schedule an emergency board meeting. None of it felt important. Around 6, Rosie managed to eat half a popsicle without throwing up. Clara declared it a victory and suggested trying some broth. Ethan heated it up while Clara kept Rosie company, telling her about the worst stomach bug she'd ever had as a kid. I threw up so much they thought I'd never stop, Clara said. I was convinced I was dying. Kept writing goodbye letters to everyone I knew. Did you die? Rosie asked seriously. Nope, still here. And you're going to be fine too. By 7:30, Rosie had kept down broth and crackers and was looking less like a ghost. She fell asleep on the couch again, this time peaceful instead of miserable. Clara helped Ethan clean up the kitchen. They worked in comfortable silence, moving around each other easily despite the space being designed for one person. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said finally. "I had no idea what I was doing." "You were doing fine. Kids get sick. It's scary the first few times, but you figure it out." "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple, but it's not impossible either." She dried the last dish and set it in the rack. "You're being too hard on yourself. You know that, right?" "Someone has to be." "No, they don't. You're allowed to be learning as you go. You're allowed to not have all the answers." He leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. "Everyone keeps telling me what I should be doing. The social worker, the doctor, my attorney. Everyone has opinions about how I'm screwing up." "Are you screwing up?" "I don't know. Maybe. Rosie barely talks to me. She calls me Ethan, not Dad. She's in therapy because I don't know how to help her process her grief. I'm rich enough to buy her anything she wants, but I can't make her smile." Clara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. "She's 5 years old and she lost her mother. That's not something you can fix by being perfect. She doesn't need perfect. She needs consistent. I'm trying to be consistent. I know you are. And she knows it too, even if she can't say it yet." His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it. His CFO, third call in 2 hours. He sent it to voicemail. "You should probably get that," Clara said. "It can wait." "Can it? Right now?" "Yeah, it can wait." She smiled at that. "You're learning." They moved to the living room. Clara sat in the armchair, Ethan on the other end of the couch from where Rosie slept. The TV was on with the volume low, some cooking show neither of them was really watching. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said after a while. "Sure." "What happened with Linda Carmichael, the investigation?" Clara's expression tightened. "I told you, probation for 3 months. She wanted me fired, but HR overruled her." "Why does she hate you so much?" "I don't think she hates me specifically. I think she hates anyone who doesn't follow her rules exactly." Clara picked at a loose thread on the chair arm. "She's been at St. Catherine's for 20 years. Worked her way up from floor nurse to administration. Very by the book. Very concerned with liability and policy. I've heard she's reported other nurses before for smaller things than what I did. So she's just a terrible person. She's someone who believes rules exist for a reason and breaking them is unforgivable. Which I get, technically, but it also makes her kind of a nightmare to work under. You could find another job. Better hospital, better boss." "I could. But St. Catherine's covers 3 low-income neighborhoods. Most of my patients can't afford to go anywhere else. If I leave, they lose someone who actually gives a damn about them." She shrugged. "So I stay, and I deal with Linda Carmichael." The matter-of-fact way she said it, like sacrificing better opportunities for people who'd never know she'd done it, was just obvious, made something twist in Ethan's chest. "You're a better person than most people I know," he said quietly. "I'm really not. I'm just someone who remembers what it's like to be on the other side." She looked at him directly. "You'd do the same thing if you'd lived my life." He wasn't sure that was true, but he didn't argue. Around 9, Clara said she should go. She had an early shift tomorrow. Ethan walked her to the door, suddenly reluctant to watch her leave. "Call me if Rosie gets worse," Clara said, "or if you just need to talk. Anytime." "I will." She left, and the apartment felt too quiet again. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Rosie recovered from the stomach bug but stayed clingy, wanting Ethan nearby even when he was trying to work from home. He rescheduled the meetings he'd missed, dealt with the crisis at the construction site, delayed permits, contractor disputes, the kind of problems that usually energized him but now just felt like noise. Clara texted him throughout the day. Small check-ins. "How's Rosie feeling? Did she eat anything? You doing okay?" Nothing intrusive, just enough to remind him he wasn't completely alone in this. Thursday afternoon, he took Rosie to her first social skills group. It was held in a community center that smelled like old carpet and industrial cleaner. 6 other kids sat in a circle with a cheerful therapist named Karen, who had everyone introduce themselves using their favorite animal. Rosie said she liked rabbits. Barely audible. Eyes on the floor. Ethan watched through the observation window as Karen led the group through activities designed to teach sharing and conversation skills. Most of the kids participated. Rosie sat quietly, following instructions, but never volunteering, never initiating. Another parent joined him at the window, a woman around his age, exhausted looking, holding a coffee like a lifeline. "First time?" she asked. "Yeah, it gets easier. My son's been coming for 6 months. He actually talked to another kid last week, unprompted. I almost cried." "That's good. Which one's yours?" He pointed out Rosie. The woman nodded sympathetically. "The quiet ones are tough. My son was like that at first. Wouldn't engage at all. But Karen's good, patient. She doesn't push too hard." They watched in silence for a while. Ethan's phone buzzed. His attorney. He sent it to voicemail. "Are you single parenting?" the woman asked. "Yeah, you?" "Divorced. His dad has him every other weekend, which is technically helpful, but mostly just disruptive because Kyle hates transitions." She sipped her coffee. "What's your situation?" "I'm raising my niece. Her mother passed away a few months ago." "Oh God, I'm sorry." The woman looked genuinely distressed. "That's brutal. How are you managing?" "I have no idea." She laughed, dark and knowing. "Yeah, that sounds about right." When the session ended, Rosie came out holding a paper heart she'd decorated with stickers. She showed it to Ethan without smiling. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Did you make that yourself?" "Karen helped?" "Well, you both did a great job." In the car, Rosie was quiet. Ethan tried to ask her about the group, about the other kids, got one-word answers, eventually gave up. His phone rang as they pulled into the parking garage. "Clara." "Hey," he answered. "Hey, how'd the social skills thing go?" "She survived it, not sure she enjoyed it. That's normal for the first few times. She'll warm up to it." "You sound very confident about that." "I am, because she's a smart kid, and smart kids figure things out eventually." Clara paused. "Listen, I was thinking, I have Saturday off. What if I took Rosie to the Children's Museum? Give you a few hours to yourself. You sound like you could use a break." The offer surprised him. "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Unless you think Rosie wouldn't be comfortable with me." "No, I think she'd like that, actually." "Good. I'll pick her up around 10? "Yeah, okay, thank you." After they hung up, Ethan sat in the car for a long moment. Clara was inserting herself into their lives more and more, becoming a fixture. Someone Rosie was starting to depend on, someone he was starting to depend on. And the terrifying part was how natural it felt, how easy it would be to let her keep showing up, keep helping, keep being the thing that made everything slightly less impossible. Saturday morning, Clara arrived exactly at 10 wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair in a ponytail. Rosie was waiting by the door, clutching her backpack like she was going on an expedition. "Ready for an adventure?" Clara asked. Rosie nodded. She glanced back at Ethan, uncertain. "Go have fun," he told her. "I'll be here when you get back." "Promise?" The question hurt. "Promise." Clara took Rosie's hand and they left together. Ethan watched from the window as they got into Clara's car, watched until the car disappeared into traffic. Then he stood in the middle of his empty penthouse and had no idea what to do with himself. He tried to work, made it through 20 minutes of emails before giving up, tried to read, couldn't focus. Finally just sat on the couch, staring at nothing, realizing this was the first time he'd been alone in his apartment in months. The silence was suffocating. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. "Mr. Vaughn? This is Linda Carmichael." His entire body tensed. "Ms. Carmichael, I hope I'm not interrupting your Saturday. I wanted to follow up on our previous conversation about the incident report." "I thought that was closed." "The investigation is closed, but I've been reviewing the hospital's connection to your custody case, and I have some concerns." Warning bells went off in his head. "What kind of concerns?" "I understand you've been spending time with Nurse Bennett outside of professional contexts, that she's been providing childcare for your niece." How the hell did she know that? Had someone been watching them? "Clara is a friend. She's helping me out occasionally. There's nothing inappropriate about it." "I'm sure that's true. But appearances matter, Mr. Vaughn, especially in custody situations. If it came to light that you're involved with a hospital employee who violated protocol on your behalf, it could complicate your case. There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. What do you want? He asked flatly. I want to make sure everyone understands appropriate boundaries. Nurse Bennett is on probation. Any further violations and she'll be terminated. And if her involvement with your family becomes an issue in your custody case, I'll be obligated to report what I know to the family court. You have no right to... I have every right to protect this hospital's interests, Mr. Vaughn, and to ensure our staff maintains professional standards. Her voice was syrup-sweet and absolutely venomous. I'm simply suggesting that perhaps it would be better for everyone if you and Nurse Bennett maintained some distance. For her sake, as much as yours. She hung up before he could respond. Ethan stood there, phone in hand, rage and fear competing for dominance. Linda Carmichael was threatening him, threatening Clara. Using his custody case as leverage to enforce whatever sick power trip she was on. He could fight back, could use his money and connections to bury her professionally, could make her regret ever targeting him. But that would take time and energy, and would probably make everything worse for Clara, who was already on thin ice. His phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Rosie is having a blast. She's been asking questions about everything. I think she's memorizing the entire ocean exhibit. A photo followed. Rosie standing in front of a massive aquarium, her face lit up with wonder. Actually smiling. Actually looking like a kid instead of a miniature adult carrying the weight of the world. Ethan stared at the photo until his vision blurred. Linda Carmichael wanted him to stay away from Clara. Wanted to use fear and threats to control both of them. And maybe she was right. Maybe the smart thing was to keep his distance, protect his custody case, protect Clara's job. But looking at that photo of Rosie actually happy for the first time in months, he couldn't make himself believe that pushing Clara away was the right choice. He texted back, "She looks happy. Thank you for this." The response came quickly. "She's a great kid. You're doing a good job with her." He wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe he was capable of being what Rosie needed. But doubt was a constant companion now. Clara brought Rosie back around 3. His niece came through the door talking, actually talking, in full sentences about the butterfly pavilion and the physics demonstrations and how water can be 3 different states of matter. "Did you know ice is just frozen water?" Rosie asked him. "And steam is water that got so hot it turned into air?" "I did know that. Did you like learning about it?" "Yeah, Clara explained it really good. Better than Mrs. Patterson." Clara smiled from the doorway. "I had a good student." Rosie ran to her room to put her backpack away. The moment she was gone, Ethan's expression hardened. "Linda Carmichael called me this morning." Clara's smile vanished. "What did she want?" "To threaten both of us. She knows you've been spending time with Rosie. She said if our involvement becomes an issue, she'll report it to family court." "She can't do that." "She can do whatever she wants, and she knows it." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "She wants me to stop seeing you, wants you to stop helping us." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Maybe she's right. What? Maybe this is getting too complicated. Maybe I should back off before I make things worse for you. "No." The word came out harder than he intended. "No. You're not backing off because some power-hungry administrator is on a vendetta. That's exactly what she wants. And if she follows through, if she reports this to your social worker and they decide it looks inappropriate, you could lose Rosie. I could lose Rosie anyway. The system doesn't need a reason. It just needs an excuse." He stepped closer to her. "But losing you, losing what you've been doing for us, that's guaranteed to make things worse." Rosie's finally starting to open up. She smiled today, Clara. Actually smiled. When's the last time that happened? "Ethan, I'm not asking you to put yourself at risk. If this is too much, if you want out, I understand. But don't leave because Linda Carmichael is trying to control us. Don't give her that power." Clara looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was conflicted, torn between self-preservation and something else. "This is a bad idea," she said finally. "Probably. We're both going to regret it. Maybe. I'm on probation. One more violation and I'm done." "I know." She shook her head, but she was almost smiling. "You're stubborn, you know that?" "So I've been told." Rosie came back down the hall, carrying her stuffed rabbit. "Can Clara stay for dinner?" The question hung in the air between them. Clara looked at Ethan. He looked back, waiting. I'd love to, Clara said finally, if your uncle doesn't mind. I don't mind, Rosie beamed. Can we have spaghetti? We can have whatever you want, sweetheart. Clara ended up making the spaghetti because Ethan's cooking skills maxed out at boiling water, and even that was questionable. She moved around the kitchen like she belonged there, talking to Rosie about the museum while chopping vegetables for sauce. Ethan set the table, feeling useless but strangely content. This was what normal families did: cooked dinner together, talked about their day, existed in the same space without everything being a crisis. They ate at the kitchen island instead of the formal dining room. Rosie told Ethan everything Clara had already heard about the museum. He listened like it was all new information, asking questions, genuinely interested. After dinner, Clara helped Rosie with her homework while Ethan cleaned up. When he finished, he found them on the living room floor with crayons and construction paper, making a poster about states of matter. Ice is a solid, Rosie was explaining very seriously, and water is a liquid, and steam is a gas. Perfect, Clara said. Now draw a picture of each one. Rosie bent over her paper, concentrating hard. Clara glanced up at Ethan and smiled. Something shifted in his chest. Something dangerous and inevitable. He was falling for her. Had probably been falling for her since she'd looked at him in that clinic exam room and seen past the money and the fear to the person underneath. And that terrified him more than any custody evaluation ever could. Around 8, Clara said she should go. Rosie hugged her goodbye, a real hug, not the stiff obligatory kind, and made her promise to come back soon. Ethan walked her to the door. Thank you, he said, for today, for everything. You keep thanking me. I'm going to start thinking you don't know how else to talk to me. I don't know how else to talk to you, she laughed. At least you're honest. She pulled on her jacket. Linda Carmichael isn't going to stop, you know. She's going to keep watching us, waiting for us to slip up. Then we don't slip up. Easier said than done. Yeah, well, nothing about this has been easy. Clara looked at him for a long moment. Something unspoken passed between them. Acknowledgement of what was happening, what was building. Neither of them named it. Good night, Ethan. Good night. She left. He stood at the door long after she'd gone, trying to figure out when his life had gotten so complicated. Or when complicated had started feeling like exactly what he needed. The week that followed was a study in controlled chaos. Patricia Martinez made another unannounced visit. Rosie's school called because she'd gotten into a fight with another kid on the playground. The contractor at St. Catherine's quit, leaving the renovation project in limbo. Ethan's CFO scheduled the emergency board meeting he'd been avoiding. Through all of it, Clara was there. Not physically. She had her own job, her own life. But in texts and phone calls and quick coffee meetups between shifts, a constant presence that made everything slightly more bearable. And Linda Carmichael was watching. Ethan could feel it, could see it in the way Clara got called into meetings for minor things, could hear it in the careful way Clara talked about work, always aware that any misstep could be her last. Friday afternoon, Ethan left work early to pick up Rosie from her social skills group. She came out looking frustrated. How was it? He asked. Tommy said his mom makes better cookies than Mrs. Chen. Okay, what did you say? I said Mrs. Chen makes the best cookies, and his mom probably doesn't even make them. She probably buys them from the store. Ethan tried not to smile. And what did Tommy say? He pushed me. So I pushed him back. Then Karen made us both sit in time out. Did you apologize? No, he started it. They got in the car. Ethan didn't start driving right away. Rosie, listen to me. I'm not mad about the pushing, but you can't solve problems by pushing people. You have to use your words. I did use my words. Then he pushed me. So you should have told Karen. Telling is for babies. He recognized that logic, had probably used it himself at her age. It's not for babies. It's for smart people who know when they need help. She didn't look convinced. Are you mad at me? She asked quietly. No, I'm not mad. I just want you to be okay. And fighting with other kids isn't going to make you okay. I don't like the other kids. Why not? They're mean. They ask about my mom. They want to know where she is and why I live with you instead of her. Ethan's chest tightened. What do you tell them? I don't tell them anything. It's not their business. She was right. It wasn't their business. But 5-year-olds didn't understand privacy. They just asked questions and expected answers. Do you want to talk about your mom? He asked carefully. Rosie shook her head. Okay, but if you ever do, I'm here. You know that, right? I know. They drove home in silence. When they got to the penthouse, Rosie went straight to her room and closed the door. Ethan stood in the hallway, feeling helpless again. His phone rang. Clara. Bad timing? She asked. No, good timing, actually. Rosie just had a rough day. Want to talk about it? He told her about the fight, about the questions from other kids. Clara listened without interrupting. That's hard, she said when he finished. Kids that age don't have filters. They just say whatever they're thinking. I know, but Rosie shouldn't have to defend her situation to people who don't understand it. No, she shouldn't, but she's going to have to learn how to handle it because people are going to keep asking. How did you handle it when you were in foster care? Clara was quiet for a moment. I lied, told people my parents were traveling or working overseas, whatever made them stop asking questions. Did it work? For a while, until I got old enough to realize lying just made me feel worse. She sighed. There's no good answer, Ethan. She's going to figure out what works for her. You just have to be there when she needs to talk about it. And if she never wants to talk about it, then you respect that. And you make sure she knows the door's open whenever she changes her mind. After they hung up, Ethan knocked on Rosie's door. Come in, she called. She was sitting on her bed with her rabbit, not doing anything, just sitting. I'm going to order pizza for dinner, Ethan said. What kind do you want? Cheese? Just cheese? Yeah. He sat on the edge of her bed. I know today was hard. I know the other kids ask questions that aren't fair, but you're allowed to tell them it's private. You don't have to explain anything you don't want to explain. Rosie picked at her rabbit's ear. Do you miss Mommy? The question caught him off guard. Yeah, I do. Me too. Her voice was very small. Sometimes I forget what she looks like, and then I remember and I feel bad for forgetting. That's normal, sweetheart. It doesn't mean you didn't love her. I know. She looked up at him. Do you think she's mad at me for living with you instead of remembering her all the time? Oh God, this kid was carrying so much guilt it was suffocating her. No, Ethan said firmly. She's not mad. She loved you so much, Rosie, more than anything. And she would be so happy that you're safe and taken care of. That's all she ever wanted. How do you know? Because she told me. Before she got really sick, she made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd take care of you. And she wasn't sad or scared when she asked me. She was relieved, because she knew I'd do everything I could to make sure you were okay. Rosie's eyes were bright with tears. I don't remember her saying that. You weren't there. It was just me and her. But I promise you that's what she said. A tear slid down Rosie's cheek. Then another. Ethan pulled her into his lap and let her cry, stroking her hair, murmuring that it was okay, that she was safe, that he wasn't going anywhere. When she finally stopped crying, she stayed curled against his chest. Ethan? She said quietly. Yeah? Can Clara come to my school thing next week? The parent thing where people talk about their jobs? Career day? Yeah, can she come? I can come. I was planning to come. I know. But can Clara come too? He should say no, should explain that Clara wasn't family, that having her at a school event would raise questions, should maintain the boundaries his attorney kept telling him to maintain. I'll ask her, he said instead. Rosie nodded against his chest. Okay. They sat like that until the pizza arrived. And for the first time since Melissa died, Ethan thought maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. Clara said yes to career day without hesitation. Ethan called her Saturday morning, half expecting her to point out all the reasons it was a bad idea. Instead, she just asked what time she needed to be there. You don't think it'll cause problems? He asked. Probably, but Rosie asked for me, right? Yeah? Then I'm coming. Let Linda Carmichael make whatever she wants out of it. The defiance in her voice surprised him. Clara was usually careful, measured. This felt different, reckless almost. Are you sure? Ethan, I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of watching everything I do because someone might use it against me. Rosie wants me there. That's enough. After they hung up, Ethan sat with the phone in his hand, trying to parse what had just happened. Clara was choosing them, choosing Rosie, choosing to show up even when it put her at risk. He didn't know what to do with that information except feel grateful and terrified in equal measure. Career day was Thursday. Ethan took the morning off work, showed up at Rosie's classroom at 10 with a slide presentation about construction management that he'd thrown together the night before. Clara arrived 5 minutes later wearing slacks and a blouse instead of scrubs, looking professional and slightly nervous. Rosie's face lit up when she saw them both. "You came! Of course we came," Clara said, crouching down to Rosie's level. "Wouldn't miss it." The classroom was packed with parents. Tommy's mother was there with her dental models. Sarah's dad had brought his fire department uniform. A couple of other parents Ethan vaguely recognized from pickup and drop-off. The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, looked surprised to see both Ethan and Clara. "Mr. Vaughn, I wasn't expecting two presenters. Clara's a nurse," Rosie announced proudly. "She helps sick people get better." Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted to something politely interested. "How wonderful. We love having medical professionals visit. Why don't you both go second? Tommy's mother is going first." They sat in tiny kindergarten chairs while Tommy's mom explained cavities and proper brushing technique. The kids asked questions. One boy wanted to know if dentists ever found bugs in people's teeth. Tommy's mom handled it gracefully. Then it was their turn. Ethan went first, keeping it simple. He talked about how buildings were made, showed pictures of the St. Catherine's renovation. The kids seemed interested, mostly because the photos included big machines.
"Do you ever knock down buildings?" one girl asked. "Sometimes, when they're too old to be safe." "That sounds fun." "It's loud," Ethan said. "And messy. But yeah, sometimes it's fun." Clara went next. She didn't have a presentation, just talked directly to the kids about what nurses did, how they helped doctors take care of patients, how they made sure people got the right medicine, how sometimes they just sat with people who were scared and made them feel less alone. "My grandma was in the hospital," one boy said. "The nurse there was really nice." "I bet she was. Nurses are pretty great." Clara smiled. "Being a nurse means you get to help people on their worst days, and if you do it right, you make those days a little less scary." Rosie was watching Clara with complete attention, like she was memorizing every word. After the presentations, Mrs. Patterson thanked everyone. Parents started filtering out. Ethan and Clara hung back while Rosie gathered her things. "Thank you both for coming," Mrs. Patterson said. "Rosie's been much more engaged lately. It's good to see." "She's had a rough few months," Ethan said. "We're working on it." "I can tell, and having consistent support clearly helps." Mrs. Patterson glanced at Clara, then back at Ethan. "Are you two married?" The question hit like cold water. "No, Clara's a friend. She helps out with Rosie sometimes." "I see." Mrs. Patterson's tone was neutral, but something in her expression shifted. "Well, either way, the support is making a difference." She excused herself to deal with another student. Clara and Ethan stood in awkward silence. "That was pointed," Clara said quietly. "Yeah. People are going to assume things." "Probably. Does that bother you?" He looked at her, really looked at her, standing in a kindergarten classroom in clothes she probably couldn't afford, having taken time off work she didn't have, all because a 5-year-old asked her to show up. "No," he said. "It doesn't bother me." Something flickered in Clara's expression. Before she could respond, Rosie ran over. "Can Clara come to lunch with us?" she asked. "I have to get back to work, sweetheart," Clara said. "But maybe another time?" "Tomorrow?" "Rosie, Clara has her own schedule. We can't just—" "Tomorrow works," Clara interrupted. "I'm off at 3. I can pick you up from school if Ethan's okay with it." Ethan should say no, should maintain boundaries, should stop letting Clara deeper into their lives when he knew it would only make everything more complicated. "That's fine," he said instead. Rosie hugged Clara goodbye. They walked to the parking lot together, the three of them, and Ethan noticed other parents watching, whispering, making assumptions. Let them, he thought. Let them think whatever they wanted. That afternoon, he got a call from Patricia Martinez. "Mr. Vaughn, I need to schedule another home visit. Some questions have come up that I'd like to address in person." His stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "I'd prefer to discuss it during the visit. Are you available Monday morning?" "I have a meeting at 9. "This is important, Mr. Vaughn. I suggest you reschedule your meeting." It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order.
Fine. Monday morning. She hung up without pleasantries. Ethan immediately called his attorney. She knows something, he said. Patricia Martinez. She's making another visit and being cagey about why. Did she say what prompted it? No, just that questions came up. His attorney was quiet for a moment. Has anything changed in your situation? New relationships, living arrangements, anything that might raise flags? Clara. She was asking about Clara. I have a friend who's been helping with Rosie, a nurse from the clinic, nothing inappropriate, just someone who's been supportive. How supportive? She comes over sometimes, helps with homework, picked Rosie up from school once or twice, came to career day this morning. Ethan, listen to me very carefully. Family court looks for stability and consistency. If they think you're introducing romantic relationships into Rosie's life when her custody is still being finalized, that's going to be a problem. It's not a romantic relationship. Are you sure? Because from what you're describing, it sounds like this woman is acting in a parental capacity. And if you're not married to her, if there's no formal commitment, the court is going to see that as unstable. So what am I supposed to do? Push away the one person who's actually helping us? I'm saying be careful. Be smart. Don't let your personal life complicate your custody case. She paused. Is this woman important to you? The question should have been easy to answer, should have been a simple yes or no, but it wasn't simple. Nothing about Clara was simple. Yeah, he said finally, she is. Then you need to decide what you're willing to risk, because if this goes sideways, you could lose Rosie. Is this woman worth that? He didn't have an answer. Monday morning, Patricia Martinez arrived at 8:30. She declined coffee, sat in the living room with her notebook, and got straight to business. Mr. Vaughn, I've received some information that I need to verify. Is it true that you've been involving Clara Bennett, a nurse from the pediatric clinic, in Rosie's care? Clara's a friend. She helps out occasionally. How occasionally? I don't know. A few times a week, maybe. And what does this help consist of? She picks Rosie up from school sometimes, comes over for dinner, helps with homework, normal friend stuff. Patricia wrote something down. Does Rosie call her anything specific? A nickname? A title? She calls her Clara. Not Aunt Clara or anything similar? No. More writing. And how would you characterize your relationship with Ms. Bennett? Friendship? Something more? There it was. The question he'd been dreading. We're friends. That's it. But you'd like it to be more. I didn't say that. You didn't have to, Mr. Vaughn. I've been doing this for 15 years. I can read between the lines. Patricia looked up from her notebook. Here's my concern. Rosie has experienced significant trauma. She needs stability, not a revolving door of adult relationships. If you're pursuing something with Ms. Bennett, that needs to be serious and committed. Otherwise, you're setting Rosie up for another loss. Claire's not going anywhere. How do you know? You've known her for what, 2 months? That's not enough time to make promises. It's enough time to know she cares about Rosie. I'm sure she does. But caring isn't the same as commitment, and commitment is what Rosie needs. Patricia closed her notebook. I'm going to be direct with you. If this relationship with Ms. Bennett is casual, end it now. Don't let Rosie get more attached to someone who might not be there in 6 months. But if it's serious, then formalize it. Make it clear what role she plays in Rosie's life. Because right now it looks unstable. And unstable doesn't work in your favor. After she left, Ethan sat in the empty apartment trying to process what had just happened. Patricia Martinez had essentially given him an ultimatum. Commit to Clara or cut her out. As if it were that simple. As if relationships operated on timelines convenient for custody evaluations. He called Clara during his lunch break. Patricia came by this morning, he said. And she knows about you, about us, whatever we are. Clara was quiet. What did you tell her? The truth. That you're a friend who helps out. Did she believe you? No. Another pause. What does this mean? It means we need to be more careful, or more committed. Patricia basically said it has to be one or the other. And which one do you want? The question hung between them. Ethan stared out his office window at the city below, all those buildings he'd helped construct, concrete and steel. Permanent structures built to last. What he had with Clara didn't feel like concrete and steel. It felt fragile, like something that could shatter if he held it wrong. I don't know, he admitted.
Clara's breath caught. Okay. Clara, no, it's okay. I get it. This is complicated. You've got a lot at stake. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the hurt underneath. Maybe Patricia's right. Maybe we should cool things off for a while. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I'm not trying to push you away. I know, but maybe you should be. She was quiet for a moment. I'll still pick Rosie up today. I promised her. But after that, maybe I should give you some space. Let you figure out what you want without me complicating things. You're not a complication, aren't I? He didn't have a good answer to that. They hung up with everything unresolved. Ethan tried to work, failed miserably. Left the office early and drove aimlessly, trying to clear his head. The problem was that Patricia was right. He was falling for Clara. Had been falling for her since the moment she'd seen through his billionaire facade to the terrified man underneath. And Rosie was getting attached. Was starting to depend on Clara in ways that would hurt like hell if Clara disappeared. But formalizing a relationship after 2 months felt insane. People didn't work that fast. Feelings didn't develop on custody evaluation timelines. Except his had. He picked up Rosie from Clara's apartment at 5. She'd kept her promise, had taken Rosie to the park after school. Rosie was chattering about the swings, about a dog they'd seen, about the ice cream Clara had bought her. Thanks for today, Ethan said to Clara at the door. No problem. Can we talk later, after Rosie's in bed? Clara hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. She looked at him for a long moment. Fine. Call me after 8. He called at 8:15. Rosie was asleep. The penthouse was quiet. Hey, Clara said when she answered. Hey, listen. About earlier. Ethan, don't. You don't owe me an explanation. Yes, I do. Because you've been showing up for us constantly, and I've been too scared to admit what that means. What does it mean? He closed his eyes. It means I don't want you to back off. It means I'm terrified of losing you, but I'm more terrified of pushing you away. It means Patricia's right. What we have is either serious or it's nothing, and I can't make it nothing. Clara was quiet for so long he thought she'd hung up. This is fast, she said finally. I know. We barely know each other. I know that too. And if this doesn't work out, Rosie's the one who gets hurt. Yeah. So why are we doing this? Because I think it could work. Because Rosie lights up when you're around. Because I'm better when you're here. He paused. Because I'm falling in love with you and I don't know how to stop. The silence stretched. Ethan's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. I'm falling for you too, Clara whispered. And it scares the hell out of me. So what do we do? I don't know. But backing off isn't the answer. Patricia's right about that much. Rosie needs consistency. If I disappear now, that'll hurt her worse than anything else. So you'll stay? Yeah, I'll stay. She laughed shakily. Even though this is probably the worst idea either of us has ever had. Probably. They talked for another hour. About what staying meant. About how to navigate this without making things worse. About the fact that Linda Carmichael was definitely going to use this against Clara if she found out. Let her, Clara said. I'm done letting her control my life. The defiance was back. The recklessness that had shown up at career day. You could lose your job, Ethan reminded her. Then I'll find another job. But I'm not walking away from you and Rosie because some bitter administrator thinks she gets to decide what's appropriate. After they hung up, Ethan sat in the dark living room feeling like he'd just jumped off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. But he jumped. They both had. Now they just had to hope they could fly. The next 2 weeks were a strange balance of normalcy and tension. Clara came over most evenings, helped with dinner, with homework, with bedtime routines. She and Ethan were careful not to be too affectionate in front of Rosie, but the kid wasn't stupid. She could sense the shift. Are you and Clara dating? Rosie asked one night while Ethan was tucking her in. Would that bother you if we were? Rosie thought about it. I don't know. Sarah's dad has a girlfriend, and Sarah says she's annoying. Clara's not annoying. No, she's nice. Rosie pulled her rabbit closer. If you get married, will she be my mom? The question hit him sideways. Your mom is your mom, Rosie. Nobody can replace her. But if Clara and I were together, she'd be someone who cares about you, someone you could count on. Like a bonus mom? Yeah, like that. Rosie seemed satisfied with that answer. She settled into her pillow. Okay. Okay? Yeah, I like Clara. She can be my bonus mom if she wants. Ethan kissed her forehead, emotions threatening to choke him. Good night, sweetheart. Good night. He found Clara in the kitchen, washing dishes that didn't need washing. She did that when she was nervous, found tasks to keep her hands busy. Rosie just asked if you'd be her bonus mom if we got married, he said. Clara's hand stilled in the soapy water. What did you tell her? That you'd be someone she could count on. And what did she say? She said she likes you, that you can be her bonus mom if you want. Clara turned around, her hands dripping, her eyes were bright. That's a lot of pressure. I know. I don't know how to be anyone's mom. I barely know how to take care of myself. You're doing fine so far. She laughed, but it came out shaky. This is insane, Ethan. 2 months ago, I didn't know you existed. Now I'm apparently someone's bonus mom? You don't have to be. If this is too much, it's too much. But I'm not going anywhere. She wiped her hands on a towel. I talked to my supervisor today, asked if there were any openings at other hospitals. What? Why? Because Linda Carmichael is making my life hell. Because I'm tired of watching my back every second. Because if I'm going to do this, really do this with you, I can't have her using my job as leverage. Did you find anything? Maybe. There's a position at County General, Pediatric ER. Better pay, better hours. I have an interview next week. That's good. That's really good. Yeah. She looked uncertain. Is it weird that I'm making career decisions based on a relationship that's barely 2 months old? Probably. But we're kind of past weird at this point. She smiled at that, crossed to where he stood and wrapped her arms around his waist. He held her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. I love you, she said quietly. I know it's fast and probably stupid, but I do. It's not stupid. It feels stupid. Well, I love you too, so we can be stupid together. She laughed against his shoulder. Okay, deal. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in his too big kitchen while Rosie slept down the hall. This was what family felt like. Not perfect, not simple, but real. And for the first time since Melissa died, Ethan let himself believe it might actually last. The interview at County General went well. Clara got the job offer 3 days later. Better pay, better hours, no Linda Carmichael. She put in her notice at St. Catherine's the same day. Linda called her in for an exit interview. Clara went in prepared for a fight. I understand you're leaving us, Linda said, her voice cold. Yes, I've accepted a position at County General. I see. May I ask why? Clara met her eyes directly. Because I don't work well in environments where I'm constantly monitored and second-guessed. I prefer to work somewhere that trusts its staff. Linda's expression hardened. I hope you understand that I'll be providing a reference if County General contacts me, and I'll be honest about your performance here. I'd expect nothing less, including the protocol violations, the inappropriate relationship with a patient. There was no inappropriate relationship. There was a nurse helping someone who needed it. If you can't see the difference, that's on you, not me. Linda stood. You're dismissed, Ms. Bennett. Please clean out your locker by end of shift. Clara left without another word. She texted Ethan from the parking lot. It's done. I'm officially free. He called immediately. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, like I just jumped off a building. Welcome to the club. I've been feeling like that for months. She laughed. We're a mess, aren't we? The best kind of mess. Her last shift at St. Catherine's was Friday. She came home to a celebration dinner that Ethan and Rosie had attempted to cook. The chicken was burned on the outside and raw in the middle. The vegetables were somehow both mushy and hard. The rice was stuck to the bottom of the pot. This is terrible, Clara said, trying not to laugh. We tried, Ethan defended. You really did. She kissed him. Order pizza? Already done. Should be here in 20 minutes. They ate pizza on the living room floor, Rosie between them, watching a movie about talking animals. Normal. Domestic. Perfect in its imperfection. After Rosie went to bed, Clara and Ethan sat on the couch together. She had her head on his shoulder. His arm was around her. I start at County General on Monday, she said. Nervous? Yeah, new place, new people, but good nervous. You're going to be great. You have to say that. You're my boyfriend. I'm saying it because it's true. You're one of the best nurses I've ever seen. You've seen like 3 nurses total. Quality over quantity. She smiled, turned her head to look at him. Thank you. For what? For being worth the risk, for making me believe this could work. He kissed her, slow and gentle. We're going to make it work. Promise? Promise. Sunday afternoon, Patricia Martinez made an unannounced visit. She showed up at 3 o'clock, knocked sharply on the door. Ethan opened it to find her standing there with her omnipresent notebook. Ms. Martinez, I wasn't expecting you. Unannounced visits are part of the process, Mr. Vaughn. May I come in? He stepped aside. She walked into the living room where Rosie and Clara were building a blanket fort. Patricia's eyebrows went up. Ms. Bennett, I didn't realize you'd be here. I'm here most weekends, Clara said calmly. I see. Patricia pulled out her notebook. Rosie, can you show me your fort? Rosie hesitated, then beckoned Patricia over. She demonstrated the elaborate structure they'd built, pillows for walls, blankets for roof, flashlights for lighting. Very impressive, Patricia said. She turned to Ethan. May I speak with you privately? They went to the kitchen. Patricia closed the door. Mr. Vaughn, during our last conversation, I suggested you either formalize your relationship with Miss Bennett or end it. It appears you've chosen formalization. We're together. Yes. And how serious is this relationship? Serious enough that Clara is part of our lives, part of Rosie's life. Patricia wrote something down. I need to be frank with you. The court prefers stability, long-term, committed relationships. What you have with Ms. Bennett is still very new. If it falls apart, that instability could impact your custody. I understand that. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're gambling with Rosie's future for a relationship that's barely established. Anger flared in his chest. With all due respect, I'm not gambling. I'm building a family. Clara loves Rosie. Rosie loves Clara. We're making this work. For now. But what happens in 6 months? A year? If this relationship ends, Rosie loses another important person in her life. She's already lost her mother. How much more loss do you think she can handle? Then I guess we'd better make sure it doesn't end. Patricia studied him. You really believe that? Yes. She closed her notebook. I'll be submitting my final evaluation to the court next week. I'm recommending full custody be granted, but I'm also recommending continued monitoring for the next year. If your situation changes, if this relationship deteriorates, the court will want to know about it. That's fair. Is it? Because I'm essentially putting your personal life under surveillance. I have nothing to hide. I hope that's true, Mr. Vaughn, for Rosie's sake. She left after that. Ethan stood in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, trying to process what had just happened. Full custody. She was recommending full custody. He'd won. Clara found him 10 minutes later, still standing in the same spot. Hey, you okay? Patricia's recommending full custody, with continued monitoring, but still. I'm going to keep Rosie. Clara's face broke into a huge smile. Ethan, that's amazing. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We did it. We actually did it. You did it. You showed them you could be what she needs. We did it, he corrected. I couldn't have gotten here without you. They stood like that, holding each other, until Rosie called from the living room asking if they were going to help finish the fort or if she had to do everything herself. They finished the fort, ate dinner inside it, watched a movie with flashlights and popcorn. Clara fell asleep halfway through, her head on Ethan's shoulder, Rosie curled against her side. This was it. This was the family they'd built from grief and fear and hope. Imperfect, unconventional, held together by determination and love. And as Ethan looked at the two people who'd become his entire world, he knew that everything they'd risked had been worth it. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. Ethan woke up that morning with his stomach in knots, the kind of nerves that no amount of deep breathing could fix. He'd been through hostile takeovers, faced down investors who wanted his head, stood in front of boards that could make or break his career with a single vote. None of it compared to this. Clara stayed over the night before. She was in the kitchen making coffee when he came out of his bedroom, already dressed in the suit his attorney had told him to wear, conservative, trustworthy,
nothing flashy. You look terrified, Clara said, handing him a mug. I am terrified. You're going to be fine. Patricia recommended full custody. The evaluation was positive. This is just a formality. Nothing with the court is just a formality. She kissed his cheek. Then I guess it's a good thing you're not doing this alone. Rosie came out of her room still in her pajamas, dragging her rabbit. Mrs. Chen was coming to watch her during the hearing. Ethan had explained what was happening in terms a 5-year-old could understand. The judge was going to say officially that she could stay with him forever. Are you scared? Rosie asked him over breakfast. A little bit, are you? She nodded. What if the judge says no? Then we figure out what comes next. But I don't think that's going to happen. Promise? He wanted to promise. Wanted to give her the certainty she was asking for. But he'd learned the hard way that promising things outside his control was cruel. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you stay here, he said instead. That's what I can promise. Rosie seemed to accept that. She ate her cereal slowly, legs swinging under the chair. Clara sat with her while Ethan paced the living room, checking his phone compulsively, even though there was nothing to check. At 8:30, Mrs. Chen arrived. Ethan kissed Rosie goodbye, told her he'd be back soon, tried not to see the fear in her eyes. Clara drove them to the courthouse. Her new job at County General had better hours, and she'd taken the morning off without hesitation. She parked in the massive lot and they walked inside together, through metal detectors and security checkpoints, into a building that smelled like floor polish and stress. His attorney met them in the hallway outside the courtroom. Sharon Kim was in her 40s, sharp as hell, expensive suit that probably cost more than Clara made in a month.
Ready? She asked Ethan. No. Good answer. The honest ones usually do better. She glanced at Clara. You must be Clara Bennett. That's me. Patricia Martinez mentioned you in her report, spoke highly of your involvement with Rosie. That's going to help.
They went into the courtroom. It was smaller than Ethan expected, less dramatic. Wood paneling, a judge's bench, a few rows of seats. Patricia Martinez was already there, sitting with a woman Ethan didn't recognize. Probably someone from Child Protective Services. The judge entered at 9 exactly. Everyone stood. The bailiff announced the case. In the matter of Rosie Vaughn, petition for permanent guardianship. It sounded so clinical, so divorced from the reality of a little girl who just wanted to know where she belonged. Judge Catherine Reynolds was a black woman in her 60s with reading glasses perched on her nose and an expression that gave away nothing. She reviewed the documents in front of her, taking her time. Mr. Vaughn, she said finally, I've reviewed the evaluation conducted by Ms. Martinez as well as the reports from Dr. Morrison and Rosie's school. I understand you've been caring for your niece for approximately 4 months following your sister's death. Yes, Your Honor. And during that time, you've established stable housing, enrolled her in school, arranged for therapy, and maintained consistent care. Yes. Ms. Martinez's report indicates that you initially struggled with the adjustment, but have made significant progress. Is that accurate? Ethan glanced at Sharon. She nodded slightly. Yes, Your Honor. It's been a learning curve. I didn't have any experience with kids before Rosie came to live with me, but I've been doing everything I can to be what she needs. The report also mentions a Ms. Clara Bennett, who has been assisting you. Is she present? Clara stood. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Reynolds looked her over. You're a nurse at County General? Yes, Your Honor. I started there 2 weeks ago. Before that, I worked at the pediatric clinic where Rosie had her evaluation. And you've been helping Mr. Vaughn care for Rosie? Yes, Your Honor. In what capacity? Clara didn't hesitate. Initially as a friend, now as his partner. I'm not Rosie's mother and I'm not trying to be, but I care about her and I'm committed to being part of her life. How long have you and Mr. Vaughn been in a relationship? About 2 months, Your Honor. Judge Reynolds made a note. That's not very long. No, Your Honor, it's not. But Rosie's already lost one important person in her life. I'm not going anywhere. The judge studied Clara for a long moment. Then she turned to Patricia Martinez. Ms. Martinez, you recommended full custody with continued monitoring. Can you explain your reasoning? Patricia stood. Your Honor, when I first met Mr. Vaughn, I had concerns about his ability to provide the emotional support Rosie needs. He's a successful businessman with demanding work commitments. He had no experience with children, and he was clearly overwhelmed. Ethan's stomach sank. This was it. This was where Patricia was going to recommend against him. However, Patricia continued, over the course of the evaluation period, I watched him make significant changes. He adjusted his work schedule. He attended every therapy session, every school meeting. He built a support system where none existed before. Most importantly, he showed up for Rosie consistently, even when it was hard, even when he didn't know what he was doing. She looked at Ethan directly. Being a parent isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. Mr. Vaughn has demonstrated that he's willing to put Rosie's needs first. That's what matters. Judge Reynolds nodded. And the relationship with Miss Bennett, does that concern you? It did initially, Patricia admitted. The timeline is fast and I worried about stability. But after observing them together, I believe Ms. Bennett is a positive influence. Rosie has become more engaged, more communicative. She's forming healthy attachments. That's critical for her development. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. The judge turned to the CPS representative. Does the state have any objections to granting full custody? The woman stood. No, Your Honor. We support Ms. Martinez's recommendation. Judge Reynolds looked down at her papers again. The silence stretched. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat, could feel Clara's hand finding his under the table and squeezing tight. Mr. Vaughn, the judge said finally, raising a child is one of the hardest things a person can do. Raising a child who's experienced trauma is even harder. It requires patience, consistency, and a willingness to put someone else's needs before your own every single day. Are you prepared for that? Yes, Your Honor. Even when it means sacrificing business opportunities, missing important meetings, putting your career second? I've already been doing that, Your Honor, and I'll keep doing it for as long as Rosie needs me to. Judge Reynolds removed her glasses. I'm going to grant your petition for permanent guardianship. Full custody of Rosie Vaughn is awarded to Ethan Vaughn, effective immediately. The relief hit so hard Ethan thought he might pass out. Clara's hand tightened on his. Sharon was smiling. However, the judge continued, I'm ordering continued monitoring for 1 year. Ms. Martinez will conduct quarterly check-ins. If at any point there are concerns about Rosie's welfare or the stability of the home environment, this case can be reopened. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. One more thing, Mr. Vaughn. Your money can buy Rosie many things, but it can't buy her what she needs most. Love, attention, presence. Those are things you have to give freely. Don't forget that. I won't, Your Honor. The gavel came down. It was over. They left the courtroom in a daze. Sharon congratulated them both, said she'd send the final paperwork within a week. Patricia caught them in the hallway. Congratulations, she said to Ethan. You did it. We did it, he corrected, nodding at Clara. Patricia smiled slightly. Yes, you did. She turned to Clara. Take care of them. They need you. I know, Clara said. I will. They drove back to the penthouse, barely speaking, both too overwhelmed to form coherent sentences. When they walked in, Mrs. Chen and Rosie were on the couch reading. Rosie looked up immediately. Did the judge say yes? Ethan crossed to her, knelt down so they were eye level. The judge said yes. You're staying with me. Forever. Officially. Rosie stared at him. Then she launched herself into his arms, wrapping herself around him so tight he could barely breathe. I get to stay? She whispered. You get to stay. She started crying. Not sad crying, but the kind of crying that came from relief so profound it had to go somewhere. Ethan held her, rocking slightly, murmuring that it was okay, that she was safe, that nothing was going to change. Mrs. Chen excused herself quietly. Clara stood in the doorway, her own eyes wet. When Rosie finally calmed down, she pulled back and looked at Ethan seriously. Does this mean you're my dad now? For real? The question stopped him. He'd been Ethan for so long, Uncle Ethan at best. The idea of being dad felt huge. Do you want me to be your dad? He asked carefully. Rosie nodded. Yeah, I think so. Then yeah, I'm your dad, for real. She hugged him again. Over her head, Ethan met Clara's eyes. She was smiling, tears streaming down her face. This was it. This was what winning looked like. Not a courtroom decision or a piece of paper. This. A kid who finally felt safe enough to call him dad. That evening, they ordered Chinese food and ate it on the living room floor. Rosie was chattering nonstop, the dam of anxiety finally broken. She talked about school, about the science project she wanted to do, about how Sarah invited her to a birthday party next weekend. "Can I go?" she asked Ethan. "Of course you can go." "And can Clara take me shopping for a present?" Clara laughed. "I'd love to." After dinner, Rosie fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from emotion. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in with her rabbit. She stirred just enough to mumble, "Good night, Dad," before going back under. Dad. He'd never get tired of hearing that. He found Clara on the balcony looking out at the city. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. "You okay?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About how crazy this is. How 6 months ago I was barely making rent and now I'm here. With you. With Rosie. Building something that feels like family. Regret it? Not even a little bit." She turned in his arms. "I love you, both of you. So much it scares me." "Good scary or bad scary?" "Good scary. The kind where you know you're exactly where you're supposed to be, even if you don't know how you got there." He kissed her, slow and deep. "Move in with us." Clara pulled back. "What?" "Move in. You're here most of the time anyway. Rosie adores you. I don't want to keep saying goodnight and watching you drive home. I want you here. Permanently." "Ethan, we've been together for 2 months. I know, and I know it's fast, but when has anything about us been slow?" He cupped her face. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. I'm just asking you to be here, to stop pretending you're not already part of this family." Clara stared at him. "This is insane." "I know. People are going to think we're crazy. Let them. What if it doesn't work out? Then we'll deal with it. But I'd rather try and fail than never try at all." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Okay. Okay? Yeah, okay. I'll move in. But I'm keeping my apartment for 3 months, just in case." "That's fair. And we're telling Rosie together, making sure she understands what this means." "Agreed. And if Linda Carmichael somehow finds out and has opinions about it, I'm ignoring her completely." Ethan laughed. "Deal." They told Rosie the next morning over breakfast. She took the news with surprising calm. "So Clara's going to live here?" she asked. "Yeah," Ethan said. "Is that okay with you?" Rosie thought about it while eating her cereal. "Will she have her own room?" "She'll share my room." "Okay, can I help her unpack?" Clara smiled. "I'd love that." "Cool." Rosie went back to her cereal like they'd just discussed the weather. Not a major life change. Kids were resilient like that. Adaptable in ways adults had forgotten how to be. Clara moved in over the next 2 weeks. She didn't have much. Her apartment had been furnished and most of her possessions fit in a dozen boxes. But watching her unpack those boxes in his bedroom, hanging her scrubs next to his suits, putting her toothbrush next to his in the bathroom, it felt monumental. This was real. This was happening. They were building a life together. Rosie helped organize Clara's books on the shelf. Mrs. Chen made approving comments about having another woman in the house. Ethan's assistant sent a fruit basket with a note that said, "Congratulations on your rapidly evolving personal life." Even his CFO made a joke about him finally settling down. The only person who had a problem with it was Linda Carmichael. She called Clara 3 weeks after the move, ostensibly to follow up on an insurance matter from her old employment. But the conversation quickly turned personal. "I heard you moved in with Mr. Vaughn," Linda said, her voice dripping false concern. "That was fast." "My personal life isn't your business anymore, Linda. I'm simply concerned about professional boundaries. You were his niece's nurse. Now you're living with him. That doesn't look appropriate." "I was never Rosie's nurse. I was a nurse at the clinic where she had one evaluation. And even if I was, I don't work there anymore. I don't work for you, so again, not your business." Linda's voice hardened. "You think you're untouchable now, but you're not. If this relationship affects that child negatively, I'll make sure everyone knows you contributed to it." "You do that, Linda. Spend your time trying to tear down other people's happiness. I'm sure that'll work out great for you." Clara hung up before Linda could respond. Her hands were shaking. Ethan found her 10 minutes later, sitting on the edge of their bed staring at her phone. "What's wrong?" She told him about the call. His expression darkened. "She can't do anything to you. You don't work for her anymore. I know, but she can make noise. She can spread rumors. She can try to make my life difficult. Then let her try. We'll deal with it. He sat next to her. Linda Carmichael is miserable. Miserable people don't like seeing other people happy. Don't let her take this away from us. Clara leaned against him. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just learned that holding on to things that don't matter is exhausting. And what matters is you, me, and Rosie. Everything else is noise. She kissed him. I really love you. You know that? I know. I love you too. Patricia's first quarterly check-in happened in November. She showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning, caught them in the middle of making pancakes. The kitchen was a disaster, flour everywhere, Rosie covered in batter, Clara trying not to laugh at Ethan's failed attempt at flipping. Patricia surveyed the scene with what might have been amusement. I see domestic life is treating you well, she said. It's treating us chaotically, Ethan corrected. But yeah. Well, Patricia interviewed Rosie first, asked her about school, friends, how she felt living with Ethan and Clara. Rosie answered honestly. She liked her new school, had 2 friends now instead of 0, felt safe at home. And how do you feel about Clara living here? Patricia asked. It's good. She helps with homework and she makes better pancakes than Dad. Rosie paused. She's not my mom, but she's Clara. That's good enough. Patricia nodded. She talked to Ethan and Clara separately, asked about their relationship, about plans for the future. Clara was starting school to get her nurse practitioner license. Ethan had scaled back his work hours, promoted his COO to handle more of the day-to-day operations. You seem happy, Patricia observed to Ethan. I am. Good. Happiness looks good on you. She closed her notebook. I'm satisfied with the progress here. Rosie is thriving. You've created a stable, loving home. Keep doing what you're doing. After she left, Ethan felt like he could finally breathe. The sword hanging over his head was still there, but it felt less sharp, less immediate. They finished the pancakes, ate them together at the kitchen island, made plans for the rest of the weekend. Grocery shopping, park time, maybe a movie. Normal things. Family things. This was what he'd been fighting for all along. 6 months after the custody decision, Ethan proposed. Not with a grand gesture or a public display. Just the 2 of them on the balcony after Rosie had gone to bed, the city lights stretching forever below them. I know we said we'd take things slow, he started. Clara laughed. We've never taken anything slow. Fair point. So I'm not going to start now. He pulled out a ring, simple, elegant, nothing ostentatious. Marry me. Not because it looks good for custody evaluations or because it's what people expect. Marry me because I want to spend the rest of my life doing this, be in a family with you and Rosie. Clara's eyes filled. You're supposed to get on one knee. I don't care about supposed to. I care about you saying yes. Yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. He slid the ring on her finger, kissed her while the city hummed below them. They were building something that wasn't supposed to work. A billionaire, a poor nurse, a traumatized kid. All the pieces that didn't fit on paper. But life wasn't paper. Life was messy and complicated and unpredictable. And sometimes the things that weren't supposed to work were exactly what everyone needed. They told Rosie the next morning. She shrieked, hugged them both, immediately started planning what dress she'd wear to the wedding. Can I be the flower girl? She asked. You can be whatever you want, Clara said. I want to be the flower girl, and I want my dress to be purple. Purple it is. They got married in the spring, small ceremony in the penthouse, with just family and close friends. Rosie walked down the aisle in her purple dress, scattering flower petals everywhere. Clara wore a simple white dress that made Ethan's breath catch. They wrote their own vows, honest, real, free of platitudes about perfect love. I promise to keep showing up, Ethan said. Even when it's hard, even when I don't know what I'm doing, even when I mess up, which I will, because that's what people do. I promise to choose you and Rosie every single day. Clara's vows were simpler. I promise to love you both exactly as you are. Not who I think you should be, not some perfect version, just you. That's enough. That's everything. They kissed. Rosie cheered. Mrs. Chen cried. Even Patricia Martinez, who'd been invited against all logic, looked pleased. Afterward, at the reception, Rosie pulled Ethan aside. Are you happy, Dad? She asked. The question surprised him. Yes, sweetheart.
I'm really happy. Are you? Yeah, she grinned. We're a real family now, like Sarah's family. But better. Why better? Because we chose each other. Sarah's family just happened. We made ours on purpose. Out of the mouths of children. Ethan pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by the wisdom of a 6-year-old who'd learned too early that families weren't always guaranteed. That night, after the last guests left and Rosie was asleep, Ethan and Clara stood in their living room surrounded by wedding debris. Flowers wilting in vases, empty champagne glasses, a half-eaten cake. We did it, Clara said. Yeah, we did. I was so scared 6 months ago, terrified this would fall apart. And now? Now I'm still scared, but it's different. It's the kind of scared that comes from having something worth losing. Ethan pulled her close. You're not going to lose us. Promise? Promise. They stood like that for a long time, swaying slightly to music only they could hear. Outside, the city continued its endless hum. Inside, they'd built something that felt like home. The year of monitoring ended without incident. Patricia's final report was glowing. Rosie was thriving. The home environment was stable. The family unit was functioning well. Judge Reynolds closed the case permanently. Ethan read the final order alone in his office, the document that said officially, legally, irrevocably that Rosie was his daughter, that nothing could take her away now. He thought about his sister, about Melissa trusting him with the most important thing in her life, about how terrified he'd been that he'd fail her. He hadn't failed. He'd stumbled, struggled, nearly fallen apart, but he'd kept showing up, and somehow, impossibly, that had been enough. Clara found him there an hour later, still holding the document. You okay? She asked. Yeah, just thinking about how different everything is from a year ago. Good different. The best different. He pulled her onto his lap. Thank you for taking a chance on us, for seeing past the mess to what we could become. You keep thanking me. I keep telling you to stop. I know, but I'm stubborn, she laughed. Among other things. They sat together in the quiet office, the city sunset painting everything gold through the windows. Downstairs, Rosie was probably doing homework or building something elaborate with blocks. Their daughter. Their family. Nothing about their story had gone according to plan. Ethan had never intended to become a father. Clara had never planned to fall in love with a billionaire. Rosie had certainly never chosen to lose her mother. But life didn't ask permission. It just happened. And the question wasn't whether the circumstances were perfect. The question was what you did with the cards you were dealt. Ethan had learned that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up on the hard days, about making breakfast when you were exhausted, about holding someone while they cried, about choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. Clara had learned that taking risks could lead somewhere beautiful, that protecting yourself completely meant missing out on everything that mattered, that sometimes the scariest thing was also the rightest thing. And Rosie had learned that family could be chosen, that losing someone didn't mean you'd lose everyone, that happiness could exist even after grief. These were the lessons that couldn't be taught in books or bought with money. They had to be lived, earned through struggle and doubt and the terrifying act of trusting that tomorrow might be better than today. 5 years later, they'd have another daughter. Clara would accidentally get pregnant despite their careful planning, and they'd spend 9 months equal parts terrified and excited. Rosie would be an amazing big sister. The family would expand to include scraped knees and science fairs and parent-teacher conferences. But all of that was future. Right now, in this moment, they had enough. They had each other. They had a home built on honesty instead of perfection. They had love that had survived scrutiny and doubt to become something unshakable. And really, what more could anyone ask for? Ethan's journey had taught him that being rich meant nothing if you were empty inside, that the things he'd thought were victories, boardroom wins, financial success, corporate dominance, paled next to the victory of Rosie calling him dad, of Clara choosing him every morning, of building something that couldn't be bought or sold or traded. True wealth wasn't in his bank account. It was in the laughter echoing through his apartment, in the crayon drawings stuck to his refrigerator, in the woman who'd seen him at his absolute worst and stayed anyway. The penthouse hadn't changed much physically. Same floor-to-ceiling windows, same expensive furniture, but it felt completely different now. It felt lived in, loved in, like a home instead of a hotel. That evening, the three of them sat on the balcony watching the sunset.
Rosie was nestled between Ethan and Clara, her head on Clara's shoulder, her hand holding Ethan's. "I love you guys," Rosie said out of nowhere. Clara kissed the top of her head. "We love you too, sweetheart." "Forever?" Rosie asked. "Forever," Ethan confirmed, and he meant it. Whatever challenges came next, and there would be challenges, because life was nothing if not complicated, they'd face them together, as a family. Imperfect, unconventional, but absolutely real. The city lights began to flicker on below them, millions of individual stories playing out in millions of individual homes. Some stories would be sad. Some would be triumphant. Most would be some messy combination of both. But this story, their story, had found its way to something worth keeping, something worth fighting for, something that proved that the best things in life couldn't be planned or controlled. They could only be lived. And as the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to appear, Ethan Vaughn, billionaire, father, husband, realized that he'd finally found what he'd been searching for all along without knowing it. Not success, not security, not even happiness, exactly. He'd found home, and it had been worth every terrifying step of the journey to get there.